No, I've been driving.
Whatever. Oh, well, then you have a treat because we learned that Sarah was not uppity.
Does uppity mean a bit?
Pretentious.
Yes. Narcissistic, entitled, too good for this, elitist.
Or the R word that you can't
But
say on YouTube.
but she is an uppity elitist R word.
Well, not
Not a-
according to a very sweet old woman who couldn't hear anything and didn't realize they were done with questioning.
What were her connection to her?
Well, from what Miss Walker said, Sarah would walk the dogs and they would go over and chat. They would chat with each other, and she did see Sarah with some marks on them, or on herself, but she couldn't get into what Sarah had told her what happened. And uh, it was a no reason why this woman was brought out of her house.
Can you look in the top right corner and see if
It
my
is.
YouTube is gone? Good.
Yes.
I'll uh, I'll I'll try hit leave. I hope I don't end my stream, and I'll have to go home because I just
Okay.
stopped in because my watch told me that Marissa said this. So hopefully everything will be okay.
All
I'll
right. Well, I'm glad we got that set up so you get the time watch too and all of that other fun stuff.
yeah, and the audience gets to see all of the Sarah we need.
Oh, yes.
Exactly.
We can't be without our Sarah.
On uppity Sarah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, dear God. This defense, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
Remember, wine moms unite, but we don't understand how intelligent they are. Jose
True.
Baez #2. Ciao.
Okay. Have a safe drive. We will try to hold down the fort.
Gracias.
Unless they keep asking really dumb questions, then we make no promises.
Right.
You can't. They can't force us to do better than we do. But I can I can I just hit leave or will it end the stream?
No, you can
Leave
hit leave.
studio.
Valhalla does it all
You'll
the time.
just you'll just leave because I have to push end stream.
Oh, it's your stream. Okay, yeah. Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao. Okay, so summary. So this morning we had two deputies that had responded to other DV, incidents. Didn't really say much. Didn't show the body cam video, and then also didn't really get much out of there. There was impeachment of Detective Goodhair, maybe about something that Mo, not me, but George's brother said. Now, it didn't seem like a particularly big thing that they got out of her. Then we had the battered spouse syndrome expert who has never actually interacted with Sarah, but to kind of explain what battered spouse syndrome looks like, what it can encompass, how it's a multifactorial sort of investigation. So you need to take things from all sorts of, facets of a person's life and, corroborate them. But it's been a pretty much an S show today. And awesome sauce, Disney nerd. Glad you had a good time and hopefully it went well. And, you had a fun time. I know your first, panel stream it's a bit of a blur. You're so hyped up and nervous and you're like, "Oh, what happened? I don't know, but I don't want to go back and watch because I hate the sound of my own voice." Which, is one of those things. So let's get back here. Maybe we can get, I don't know, the lady that checks out their groceries next. Hard-hitting witness. Well, at Total Russian Bot, it is a totally accidental, unintentional self-defense. Oh, in the summary, I did, if you missed this morning, I would encourage you to go back. We did see the videos of George breaking the television. Now, what we were told we were going to see is George, screaming about Sarah letting Brian come in to fix the television, how she is all sorts of a loose woman and a Jezebel. What we saw was a man who struggled to make 3 strikes of the baseball bat without getting winded, and then possibly saying something like, "I don't really want to do this, S." It's very different. She's also holding the phone like this as he is hitting the TV. Now, that strikes me as incredibly not difficult to believe that he is going to be, going out of control and being okay with her obviously filming, because it was about at chest height. And yeah, so I don't know what's going on today. And Rain is right. There was a towel on the floor in front for like the glass to fall onto. Let's see what they have next.
Defense, ready to call your next witness. Yes.
It's all going to be up to the jury and what personal experiences they bring in. So if I were a juror, she's still guilty.
Same.
If it is going. Yesterday was anticlimactic for Sarah being on the stage. I think she gave us a better insight into how she sees all of this, but whether that's the truth or not is no. And then Let's Go Brandon has a question for you, Marissa.
I don't want to know. I'm sure it's a something I don't want to repeat.
A seal.
Yeah,
I don't know.
there you go.
Seals always reminded me as a dog with no legs, but
Especially Pitties. Doesn't matter. He's not coming anyways. Got it. I really thought that was going to be dirty or something. It wasn't. And I'm kind of disappointed.
thank you, Brandon. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of, but yeah, that does make sense.
That was more Zach-esque than Brandon.
That was.
I'm itchy. I got
They
hives
must be waiting for their experts. I guess they were supposed to be arriving in by airplane.
Well, they've got those whiskers and their cute little noses.
And they bark.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh God,
Why are
what
we-
delay are we looking at now?
I am so tired of them approaching.
I have current dramatic stress about them approaching because I know that they're going to be adding some sort of delay or some sort of stupidity, and I always cringe, like I curl up on myself just a little bit when the judge is like, and anything from the defense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we were so close to being done. No.
I don't think the defense is going to rest. They have an expert coming in. And yes,
Members of the jury,
M169 corgis
witness
do look
is
like a
running
mug.
2 minutes late. I think they may be stuck in the security line downstairs. So we're just going to be in a short recess for them to join us this afternoon. Similar instruction that I've given you, please do not conduct any independent investigation or research regarding the person, places, things, or charge involved. And do not have any discussions amongst yourselves or anyone else, and we'll bring you back in as soon as that witness arrives. Thank you again for your patience.
Thank you, Zach. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea.
I think I'm stressed for Sarah. I'm so itchy.
Yeah.
Y'all can see it. Thank you. We'll be off the record until Dr. Harper arrives.
Oh, for the love of all that is unholy. I mean, even your witnesses can't be on time. Oh, okay. So, need to take you off of 2 so you're not super duper fast. I have no idea. Obviously not for
Case number
dinner.
2020 CF 2603, State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. State.
Judge, before we began trial, I had indicated that in the past, historically, as cases, there were problems with cameras showing attorneys' laptops. It's been brought to my attention that that is going on again. I'm asking the court to order whoever it is who has a camera, whether it be phone or TV pool camera, that they not do that.
Okay. All right.
That they what?
Members of the gallery, good afternoon. And the TV crews as well. Information that's contained on both parties' laptops, be it the defense or the state, is protected by
And
work product
thank you,
and
let's
attorney-client
go,
privilege.
Brandon.
It's not something that's viewable, not something that should be disseminated, and not something that.
Because she was in the clink. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure she wanted to have her own funeral, not with his family.
Right. She wasn't invited?
No one wanted her there.
Thing that can be looked at unless there is a knowing, intelligent waiver, and that stuff's going to be put out to the public for consumption. So I'm going to ask you as best as possible not to view, take pictures of, or look at any of the laptops, be it the defense's laptops or the state's laptops, to avoid that. With regard to the camera, if we can, when zooming in on either the defense counsel's table or the state's counsel's table, if we can try to avoid their laptops, I would greatly appreciate you, sir.
Camera.
You could kind of see
Thank you.
Owen's phone.
Sorry, I missed Lesko's answer.
Oh.
She's not
Jesus.
much of a morning person.
He's not wrong.
I don't know why that tickles me so very much. That I should not be giggling like a 4-year-old, but I am totally there. Oh, I guess we're still in recess mode.
I was going to say, do we get to watch him writing? Oh, here we go.
All right, jury dinner.
I guess someone was recording with their cell phone or something to that
State, do you
effect.
recognize our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, do you recognize our jury? All right, thank you. All can be seated. Again, members of the jury, if you could just raise those hands, confirm you complied with the court's instructions. Record reflect all hands have been raised. All right, defense, at this time you may call your next witness.
We call Dr. Julie Harper.
Welcome.
Just got off a plane. Holy crap. I would hate them.
I do.
Doctor, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
Dr. Julie Harper, Harper.
Thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think you've already stated your
Okay.
name, but just introduce yourself to.
Look, I don't watch the show, but she reminds me of that redheaded chick off of Bridgerton.
Oh, yeah. And also the one aunt in Sabrina, the Teenage Witch.
Oh my gosh, yes, the fun aunt.
Yes.
Whatever her name was.
Zelda,
All right, we already... Zelda.
maybe?
I don't remember.
Tell to the jury.
My name is Dr. Julie Harper, and I'm a licensed psychologist.
Would you tell the jury your educational background?
I have an undergraduate degree from Oberlin College in biopsychology. I have a master's degree from University of Denver. I went on from my master's degree to earn a psychological doctorate. That's called a PsyD. That was also from University of Denver. In completing that education, I specialized in psychological assessment, which means I had extra coursework in that area of learning to administer psychological tests to other people. I completed an APA-approved internship at Washington State University, which means that I was matched, and that was my site to practice being a psychologist for a full year, and that was between 1999 and 2000. And following that, I turned in my dissertation, which was in the passing of power in couples relationships. I then graduated and started my postdoc work in Pullman, Washington. As part of becoming a psychologist, you have to have over 1,500 to 2,000 hours of supervised work as a psychologist. The person that supervised me was a forensic psychologist. So during that postdoc time, that was my introduction to forensic work while I worked at a community mental health center.
Dr. Harper, how long have you been licensed?
I was first licensed in Washington State in 2002, so 22 years.
What type of position have you held as a psychologist?
Well, I was rehired at my internship site, so I worked at Washington State University College Counseling Center.
Thank
I
you,
also
Dr.
worked
Brandy.
2 times at a community mental health center. The first time was in Pullman, Washington, and that was during the period of time where I was getting my postdoc hours completed, and then I stayed on after licensure. I also worked in Florida. When I came to Florida in 2005, I took a position in the Fort Walton Beach area at Bridgeway Center, which is a community mental health center. And while working there, I completed a variety of psychological assessments. I was directing the testing program. I also began working during the Department of Juvenile Justice contract work for evaluating adolescents that had gotten into legal trouble and needed an assessment for consideration of program placement. I worked in that community mental health setting doing clinical assessments and the DJJ contract and Social Security evaluations, and continued that until about 2010. In 2010, I opened my own private practice, which is Northwest Florida Psychological Services. And in the beginning of the practice, it was a combined clinical and forensic practice, meaning that I spent a majority of time doing psychological assessments to answer questions from physicians about things like ADHD, depression, to make treatment recommendations. I had the therapy patients, and I also did, again, Social Security disability evaluations, so numerous kinds of assessments. And then over time, I began doing more and more forensic work, including receiving appointments from judges to do competency to stand trial evaluations, sanity at the time of the offense evaluations for Circuit 1 in Florida. And I continued to do the Department of Juvenile Justice contract briefly, but then that it came up for bid and I discontinued that contract. What I did is I slowly reduced my clinical practice, because when you do forensic psychology, it means you have to travel. Your individuals that you're seeing are not usually out in the community. A lot of times you have to see them in jail. So it's hard to maintain a therapy practice, and I scaled that back over time. Eventually, my practice became entirely forensic. And then in 2017, I took a job with the state of Georgia to be an evaluator full-time. I was working doing competency to stand trial and sanity at the time of the offense evaluations, and then assisting with risk assessments in the inpatient setting. I did that until 2021. At that time, my private practice was just quieted down, of course, from COVID, and I was not in full-time practice. So I wished to return to full-time practice with my own company, and I did that in May of 2021. And since then, obviously, the courts are busy again. We're all recovering from the COVID era and back to full-time practice.
Now, where do you live?
I live in Okaloosa County, and that is in the panhandle of Florida.
And is that where your practice is currently?
Yes.
Is it fair to say you travel the state to? Is it fair to say you travel the state to do assessments or evaluations?
That's correct. I travel to a lot of cities throughout Florida, far south as like Miami, and then of course working along.
Is it fair to say that you testified in various counties throughout the state?
Yes.
And I know that yesterday you were set to testify.
I don't think she read the rule book.
Panama City.
That's correct. I was testifying yesterday in a death penalty case in Bay County.
All right. And when you finished, you drove here?
Yes, I did.
My understanding is you got here after midnight.
Yes.
What other counties have you testified in?
Well, I've testified here in Orange County, in Miami-Dade, in Duval. It might be hard for me to list everywhere. Alachua, Escambia, Santa Rosa County, Walton County, Bay County, Washington.
So just so the jury understands, the nature of practice is you have to travel throughout the state.
Well, I do work in cases where the person is at risk of, succumbing to the death penalty. And so those cases require repeated evaluations in different vicinities. And so I have been, traveling to work on murder cases.
Succumbing to the death penalty? Like subject to capital murder, I could understand, but succumbing. It's a very odd phraseology.
There are psychologists, I suppose, that do forensic work that might just confine their work to one circuit or state, but I actually broadly travel.
Okay. You said that your practice is now entirely forensic?
That's
What
correct.
you said? And you testified about what kind of forensic work you do?
Yes. So as a forensic psychologist, sometimes I am tasked with testifying about something very specific. So for instance, a person's ability to stand trial if they are knowledgeable and can go forward with their trial process. I've testified about a person's sanity at the time of the offense, meaning if they had a mental health condition that met the statute as to not being sane at the time of the offense. I've testified in sentencing hearings. I've been an expert witness for Department of Children and Families. I've testified in vocational rehabilitation hearings as their expert in what's called social investigation. That's what they used to call.
So, beautiful Bernice, the defense is going to say that Sarah had the mindset of a woman who has been very viciously abused. This battered spouse syndrome basically gives you kind of a rationale as to why Sarah didn't call 911 or didn't, get away. It's in theory supposed to be able to explain why a person doesn't leave instead of, oh, the next time their, really terrible boyfriend attacks, they blow them away. It sort of explains some of the, relationship constellation and issues in, domestic situations. But in order for this to work, she has to have, she has to have, I've got it on. Oh, it's you. Baker is right. He's making it DV PTSD. So it does give a better understanding as to why people aren't maybe acting the way someone who is not dealing with those issues are. So that is kind of what is going on here. She is going to be telling everyone how Sarah is totally the victim and how it could be possible that she could, fear for her life greatly. Now, she's very, very perky, and I do worry that we are getting to another expert that is men are bad. And yes, let's go, Brandon. Baker was able to get a stream up, so Baker is now, or a stream for Baker is now up. Yes.
I would say that the majority of my work comes through with that court-appointed funding. Percentage-wise, probably about 90%.
Okay. Now, I realize you testify on occasion by the state, but the majority of your time, 90%, 95% of the time, you testify on the behalf of the defense?
Yes, the evaluation's complete and either side can call me for testimony, and the majority of the time I'm called by defense.
And so you make a living by traveling the state, and generally the court system, I think they call it JAC, pays your fees.
So I make a living by performing work as a forensic psychologist, evaluating individuals, most of the time that are incarcerated in a prison or a jail setting, providing consultation to attorneys who might just have questions that would need a psychological expert to explain something to them. I also do fitness for duty evaluations for law enforcement, pre-employment evaluations for law enforcement and firefighters. So depending on the work that's needed, I do those.
Doctor, how is a forensic psychological evaluation different than a regular psychological evaluation? Can you tell the jury?
Sure. So if any of us went into a psychologist's office and had an evaluation done, it would be most likely for treatment. So things like if you qualify for surgery or you're going to have treatment, maybe you've got a condition that you want therapy for. A psychological assessment is very helpful in identifying a diagnosis and then setting a course for treatment. A forensic psychological evaluation has many of the same procedures, but the aim is really different. The aim would be to answer some kind of legal question that is posed. So as an expert, I might be in the position to provide some education or experiential descriptions of something that a person might be suffering from to people that are going to make a decision. So for instance, if it's a competency evaluation, I would educate the fact finder. In that case, it would be a judge about what is wrong with the person or if they had any deficits at all, or if they were competent to proceed. In a situation like this, a forensic psychological evaluation might be geared more to identifying, again, if there is a mental health condition present in the defendant I'm evaluating, and then to provide a jury with education about what I found in my evaluation.
How many forensic psychological evaluations have you conducted? Estimate.
So just as an estimate, it's clearly more than 4,000. I've been doing forensic psychological evaluations as far back as 2007.
Have you been qualified as an expert to testify in forensic psychologist in court as a forensic psychologist?
I have.
And you said you've testified for the prosecution.
Yes.
And you've testified for the defense.
Yes.
Is there any difference in the work that you do depending on who hires you? Which side?
Absolutely not. A forensic psychological evaluation is an objective assessment of what's going on with the person. So you should be performing the same kinds of procedures in doing the evaluation. It should not matter who's retained you. What you're trying to do is answer a question.
Are there times when you actually do an evaluation and assess an individual, but then you're not actually called to testify?
Yes, many times that's the case. You will provide your feedback to the attorney, and then it's up to the attorney to decide if there's anything in there that would be useful to them, or if they're pursuing a certain kind of information for the court, they would choose to call you for testimony.
Dr. Harper, do you recognize Sarah Boone at the defense table with Tony Henderson?
I do.
When did you first get involved with Miss Boone?
It would have been in around June of 2020. Was the first I heard of her case.
And what were you asked to do?
A comprehensive psychological evaluation of Ms. Boone.
And did you do that in Miss Boone's case?
I did.
Okay. Were you given materials to review?
I was.
Is that standard operating procedure?
Yes.
You assess the client individually, one-on-one, and then there are collateral evidence or material that you also consider?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Yes. So in forensic work, there are a variety of documents that are usually available in assessing a defendant. In this case, for criminal court, you would see things like witness statements. There might be body cam footage or just more information about the offense itself. Sometimes there's an interrogation video. So you would get kind of the legal description of the offense and the things that have occurred. I also will often get educational records of a person, mental health records, hospital records, things of that nature that would describe their biopsychosocial history to me.
And you were given materials as it relates to Sarah Boone to review?
Yes, I have been.
How many times did you meet with Sarah Boone?
So 9 times.
All right. Can you tell the jury what you did as part of your evaluation of Sarah Boone?
Thank you for becoming a member,
Well,
Sammy
we
Spills
had
with
clinical
me.
forensic.
Welcome to the Church of Mo. We have dark chocolate and sarcasm and dark humor. We are not tax accredited yet, though I am working on it.
Interview in which I reviewed her background history, so her early childhood. I also assessed her with assessments, meaning I administered 3 psychological tests to her. I reviewed her prior mental health records, her interrogation video, some prior information about her legal history. So she had been previously arrested. I reviewed that as well. We had an opportunity to review the transcript of her interrogation video. So there were a variety of things that would be considered what I did with her.
Okay. So you considered some medical records?
Yes,
And did you also consider some records from George Torres's records?
I did see his hospital records.
Now, do you consider in doing an assessment and forming any opinions, an individual like Ms. Boone's upbringing in terms of where they grew up and what their family environment was like?
Yes, that's part of gathering their background history, so biopsychosocial information.
And did you consider Ms. Boone's upbringing in forming any opinions?
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so of her history, I found it pertinent that she was raised with.
Conduit 704.
Roach.
Interesting. Hey, Marissa, if you would like to pause it, I am going to do my annual daily running to get the ferals. I will be on texting or not texting, chatting in my chat, but I have to go get my youngest 2 ferals. And then I will be back by 3. So I will be, chatting while I'm in the line of wait for forever. But Marissa is going to hold down the fort, and thank you so much. So I will be back, you guys.
See ya. Oh, I'm gonna speed through this. I didn't catch what the objection was, but meh.
The objection is sustained.
Would you have considered, as part of her family background, whether or not some of her family members had passed away early in her life?
Objection, pleading conduit 704.
Sustained.
You considered the entire family background and history without going into the details of what she said or what you learned from looking at records? I'm sorry?
Yes,
And did you consider her relationship with her mother as part of her psychological development?
yes,
Now, do you believe that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
I do.
She doesn't qualify or meet the criteria for that diagnosis, does she?
I did not diagnose her with that.
Can you elaborate on or explain how you feel that Sarah Boone does have some narcissistic traits?
Well, in meeting with her as part of the evaluation, the narcissistic traits that I identified would have to do with, as she described, being a straight A student. She reiterated about her abilities, and I felt that that was evidence that she had low self-esteem, and her coping mechanism was to identify.
This is a psychologist, psychiatrist, one of those. I kind of tuned out her really long CV, but she actually met with Sarah Boone, allegedly.
What made her stand out, and that would be consistent with a narcissistic trait.
Now, I know there's been reference in this case to a manual that all psychologists, all psychiatrists refer to. Do you have that manual with you?
I do.
And what is the name of that manual?
It is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the text revision. So it's the DSM-5 text revision.
Now, Dr. Brandon testified earlier today, and there was some evidence relating to when you suffer from narcissism, there's a sense of grandiosity. But is that from this manual and your studies and your experience, where they require excessive admiration and whatnot, that there's a reason for that?
If I'm understanding your question, there's a criterion in narcissistic personality disorder related to that.
What I'm getting to is many times you may have these narcissistic traits, but really you suffer from very low self-esteem.
That's the underpinning of that criterion.
Would you explain that to me?
If I'm allowed to reference the DSM, then I can explain it best.
Just don't read from it. Just
All
you
right.
need to review. If you need to read a paragraph and then explain it to the jury.
So based on the description in the DSM, if a person's self-esteem is very fragile and they have low self-esteem, they may require more outside admiration or even appear more grandiose in their abilities because at root, they don't feel secure and confident. And so it's what we would call a defense. And so that criterion is actually a way that a person tries to make themselves feel better.
Anything else you want to say about that issue?
Well, you asked me about why I didn't diagnose narcissistic personality disorder. And again, from the DSM,
Are there criteria?
there are criterion for each disorder.
And so when you're assessing someone, they have to meet all those criteria for you to form that opinion that they actually suffer from that disorder.
Well, the first, I guess, issue is, do they have the criterion that are listed? And then the second would be, is there a different mental health disorder that would better explain the criterion that you're seeing? The criterion within the DSM overlap considerably across disorders. And so there are some helpful guidelines within the DSM to remind you of that you may have what's called differential diagnosis. So if you're considering one thing, that you also are directed to look at other things. So that happened in this case, in this instance, that the DSM guided me to also look at other things.
But just for purposes, to make it clear, you did not diagnose her with narcissism, that disorder.
That's correct, because the DSM's description guided me that would not be an appropriate diagnosis.
Why did you not diagnose Ms. Boone with a personality disorder?
Well, first of all, it has to be a pervasive pattern of distorted relational abilities. So basically, if she is demonstrating in a variety of settings that she has these symptoms. And then secondarily, the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder is listed when you're considering personality disorders.
So now she has PTSD. Welcome back.
Yeah, the PTSD is a requirement for the PSS.
Oh,
PSS is a DV PTSD.
So
So she needs to have PTSD to have BSS.
gotcha.
But it still doesn't allow you to unalive someone delayed. You can't accidentally unalive someone in self-defense. It's where all of this will fall on that, and this is for the state to talk about. But this lady is a talker. Is she an explainer? Why does she have a DSM if that's vast majority of diagnoses require medication she can't prescribe? Because this lady makes her living off of, you heard that, my private practice was renting myself out to the defense. if you are 90 to 95 defense case witnesses, you are a hired gun who will find a diagnosis that aligns with what the defense is looking for. But let's hear what she's saying, because
I think it's crap, but
well, all of the defense is crap.
right.
So this is just more crap.
Right.
The DSM guides you that if there are personality changes that are associated with the exposure to a trauma, then you should consider post-traumatic stress disorder and not a personality disorder.
Have you diagnosed her with anything? And we'll elaborate on that, but through your assessment, have you diagnosed her with anything?
Yes, so she has a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. She has symptoms of anxiety that would be consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. So that is an anxiety disorder.
And you feel like she suffers from post-traumatic stress?
I do.
Now, at the time of this event, we're talking February 23rd of 2020, you were aware that she did not have much family support.
Yes.
Doctor, why do you administer psychological testing?
Psychological testing allows an objective measurement of what the person's symptoms may be as compared to sort of an average. So if we can see what the average range on a standardized measure would be for any person, if there is an interpretable difference, that gives me clinical information. So it's not just relying on what the person has told me. I've got an objective measurement that I can compare to other people. And then I also administer psychological testing in a forensic evaluation to help assist me in making sure that the person is intending to put in good effort with me. In some forensic settings, a person may have a reason to present symptoms, like if they're in a custody evaluation, for instance, they might have a reason to minimize symptoms, or they may exaggerate something else. And so assessments as to the person's response to you and if they're validly participating are important.
So they're tests to see if you're faking or malingering or that type of thing?
Right, and so you would call it feigning mental health symptoms when the person is either far exaggerating a symptom they do have, or if they're pretending to have a symptom that they do not actually have.
Okay. Now, as it relates to Sarah Boone, what type of psychological testing did you administer?
I administered the inventory of legal knowledge, and that is a test that has to do with whether or not she was validly participating regarding her understanding of the legal process. I also administered the Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms test.
Now, explain to the jury what that Miller Forensic Assessment of Symptoms test is.
So that is also a test of feigning to identify if she's validly participating in the evaluation. So if she had endorsed psychological symptoms or psychiatric symptoms, that would be unusual or not typical of a valid psychiatric patient.
What were the results of Ms. Boone's test on the Miller Forensic?
She validly participated. There was no indication of any feigning or malingering.
As far as the inventory of legal knowledge case, what were the results?
Again, she was validly participating, and she did not even come close to the cutoff. That would put her in the range of feigning.
Can you tell the jury what the purpose of the clinician-administered post-traumatic stress disorder scale is?
Yes. So that would be considered a very useful assessment of post-traumatic stress disorder. It allows me to interview a person about exposure to a traumatic incident and then identify if there's a change in behavior that has occurred as a result of that exposure to trauma.
At the time that you administered that test, did Ms. Boone in fact have post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well,
Or tell me the results.
yes. So the results would be consistent with a person having post-traumatic stress disorder. I do not diagnose from one test. That wouldn't be appropriate, but it is consistent with the background and the symptoms that I had previously, taken down during my evaluation of her. So the clinical portion, when we go through symptoms, that was consistent with the outcome of that test.
And with this testing, all the testing, help you determine if Ms. Boone had a change in functioning from before the alleged trauma
Bless you.
to after the alleged trauma, and I'm referring to
A lot
the
of this
trauma.
is
We'll talk
pleasure
about
to
what the
everyone.
trauma was, but the trauma was the intimate partner violence.
That's correct.
Okay, but would that testing help to determine if she had a change in functioning from that trauma of the intimate partner violence?
Absolutely.
and did you determine that she did suffer from trauma as a result of intimate partner violence?
That was my conclusion. Yes, that's my opinion.
Now, in considering all the available information, you don't.
So they had to find somebody all the way in Washington, the state of.
No, she works in Florida now.
Oh,
She got her, and then she left her position to strike it out as an expert witness for hire, and then the coup hit, and she went back. And as soon as the courts opened up again, she said, "I can make $350 an hour doing this crap."
and
So,
saying
she's
whatever
back.
they pay me to say.
Well, I'm not saying that. Of course, she has valid testing, and all of it is objective and totally scientific.
Yeah. Sure.
Just like Dr. Spiegel, who testified that Johnny Depp was an alcoholic because he watched Pirates of the Caribbean.
just rely on what Ms. Boone tells you to
No.
make your decisions.
No, I don't. I do interview a person as part of the clinical forensic interview, of course, but I also consider things that are reported, like in their arrest narrative, witness statements, all of medical records. So there are a variety of sources of information, collecting data points and reviewing those to arrive at a conclusion.
So you did review Ms. Boone's previous diagnoses in her history.
Yes,
Did you consider the previous diagnoses in arriving at your own?
I did. Yes.
What did Ms. Boone, what had she been diagnosed with prior to you getting involved?
Section 70400.
Approach.
Ugh, good grief.
Yeah. So we're going to go through an hour of this just to get to, well, she has PTSD, and then the cross will be, because I believe Dr. Harper have been on and off the case because she didn't want to work for the court fee given to her. And I believe, and I might be wrong, that in one of the court filings or something, they talk about her walking out on the doctor because she didn't want,
Yeah.
but she really wanted to work with her.
Well, it's free marketing. Sort of.
Helen, why am I throwing her under the bus? Because I don't think it's I don't think it's a good thing if you have opinion for hire. That's why I like the system we have. Is a doctor comes in, it's a doctor. You don't have this, I'll go with this expert. Oh, they don't say what I want to say. Because why didn't the guy this morning diagnose her? Why was he just there to tell us what battered spouse syndrome was? To me, that just seems like they couldn't get him to say it because he didn't say it. He said on TV she had no indication of battered spouse syndrome. My problem is American courts
Objection is sustained.
have this expert for hire system,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like it, especially when it's something like this, which is a highly clinician-led, because you can give those 5 tests to 5 different experts, and they would all get a different signal.
Right.
Because working with HR, when they do those personality tests, you have a scorecard, but in the end, it's dependent on how you really feel about the client. It's I've taken them, my buddy have taken them, and we figured out how to fool it so we look like great workers. And
Right. I mean,
she's not lying as much as Sarah, but yeah.
I do think that she does have some personality disorders. Maybe she has PTSD. I don't know, but I don't think they're not going for the insanity defense here.
No.
And I mean, I get that they need this PTSD and whatever for BSS, but I don't know.
Wallstrom, I know what you like. Go Gamecocks.
Ugh.
But you would agree, and I think this is a fair question, you would consider prior other experts who may have diagnosed her with something.
So I would definitely consider her mental health records, diagnoses previous clinicians may have arrived at the time when I diagnosed her myself.
Okay, given the assessment that you did with Sarah Boone, and considering the totality and the time you spent with her and the other records, did you diagnose Sarah Boone with anything?
Yes, so post-traumatic stress disorder. It's my opinion at the time of the offense, she had depression and she had an alcohol use disorder.
Just in time.
All right. I know we've talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if I need to ask you anything further. I think the jury probably understands that. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that disorder?
I'm not sure what the jury's already been told about post-traumatic stress disorder, but in Sarah Boone's case specifically, because of enduring, she specifically noted the time that she was stabbed with the knife as being an extremely.
Sustain.
You have viewed. Have you viewed some exhibits involving her being stabbed?
I think that we have had exhibits in common. I'm not sure what was admitted.
Have you seen the physical scar from Sarah Boone being stabbed in the back of the leg?
Yes, I've seen her scar.
You're saying?
Overruled.
Alcohol disorder
just
is the
generally,
actual name now
I think
because
I've
people
explained
can't be
post-traumatic stress, but
alcoholics.
if
It's a
there's something else
disease.
the jury-
Remember that.
Right.
Just generally, without getting specific, I think I've explained post-traumatic stress, but if there's something else the jury you believe the jury needs to know, but it's
Objection.
a sort of trauma
Objection.
that occurs as a result of one or more
Objection.
events.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is the psychological after effect of being exposed to a very significant stressor or cumulative stressors that make the person's behavior, thinking, and mood change. And so the change can include things like the person becomes hypervigilant, is easily startled, has trouble thinking, has trouble sleeping. So their body is in a state of agitation. Can also include changes in mood that would include irritability, difficulty relating to others, and that they might be resistant to trust easily. So those are all
They
features.
have trouble sleeping sometimes.
Yes,
Sleep deprivation is a real issue.
it's associated with things like nightmares and having trouble settling.
Now, you mentioned that you had diagnosed her with depression. Can you just give us a general understanding for the jury of depression?
Yeah.
So the persistent sad mood.
Now she's gonna say, well, she had the big sad, and they bring up the sleeping disorder the entire time. The state should just go up and say, is it normal for people with PTSD to sleep 14 hours when they are in a high alert mode? Trust me, I served in our reserve for a long time after I got out of the army. We had guys when we were on, we call them exercises, but some of them had severe PTSD before we really start talking about PTSD. Everyone has PTSD today. Back then, it was still war related. None of them slept for 14 hours if anything happened. And if we had simulated attacks or anything like that, they were like a feather. Spring is what I meant. They never slept 14 hours. They didn't. I really hate that PTSD is everything today.
Right.
Especially, I had a buddy of mine who was in a camp called Dwar, where they were shelled for 70-something days. If you didn't make noise before you woke him, he would attack you because he was so high strung. This lady sleeps for 14 hours after killing her boyfriend. Yeah, there's no problem. I call BS on the PTSD. It's way too easy to get today when we see what it was back in the day. But everything is a diagnosis today. Oh, you're an alcoholic. It's because you weren't the diaper was put on you the wrong way.
Yeah. Or you peed your pants until you were 5.
Yeah. Sorry.
General understanding for the jury of the question.
So the persistent sad mood, including feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, having difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, changes in appetite, those would be typical of
Could
depression.
it also be because
And
you are
children suffer
a
from
massive
that?
alcoholic?
Near the time of the
Right. Yeah. And everybody is correct. I meant to say something like she does sleep. I mean, it may be
Yeah.
termed as passing out, but I don't know.
offense, yes.
Or can you explain to the jury alcohol use disorder? That's a fairly new name. That's 5 or 6 years ago. The manual came up with a different name.
It did, right? And so that would be, in layman's terms, you might call it alcoholism. It's a tendency to drink too much and then have some kind of consequence in your life as a result of your substance use.
And alcoholism can be
It's a choice.
depending on how much you drink and then how often you drink.
That's right.
All that is something that you would consider in diagnosing.
Yes.
The many people who suffer from alcohol use disorder, I don't know how to put this, are they in denial?
I would say that that is one of the stages of alcohol use disorder and amenability to treatment. So in denial, it's because you do not want to acknowledge that there are consequences from your use, because in doing that, you might have to reduce how much you're using. So to deny means that you feel that you can continue your use without having to change that. So you want to maintain the access to the substance.
You don't have a problem.
That's right.
What is the difference between traits and a diagnosis?
Well, we all have personalities. And so you're going to have coping mechanisms that include personality style.
I disagree. Some people have no personality. And yes, I think anyone can have narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah. Every
think-
one of us, if we did a test, will have some form of diagnosis, because we'll just shift the bar so we can sell you drugs or treatment.
Right. And
Thank you,
I think,
Eileen.
yeah, it is offensive, but she has to check the box.
Yeah. I had a friend who couldn't live with his children because he loaded his. Yeah. And that's why I hate the PTSD, because I've seen war veterans who suffer from it. And it's nothing like, oh, I saw a hand, so I had to kill him.
Yes. Ugh. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
So for instance, even though you might not be diagnosable as something, there are times when if you're upset, hurt, frustrated, you have a mood state that's unpleasant, you're going to deal with that by using some kind of coping mechanism. So traits of personality disorders might be present in the way that you deal with inner pain, things that you don't like feeling. So some people, for instance, if they feel uncomfortable, they may cling too much or become excessively bonded to try to escape a feeling that they don't like. And that might be a dependent personality trait. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have a personality disorder, because that would have to be pervasive across like all the environments. But when stressed or upset or not feeling good, you're going to use some kind of coping mechanism, and that might be one of the criterion, for instance, of the personality disorder. You would call that a trait.
And is it your understanding that this trauma that one suffers from repeat domestic violence can cause one to be considered suffering from the syndrome, we call it battered spouse or battered woman syndrome?
Yes. So the diagnosable condition would be PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. That's how a clinician would label the response to trauma. The pattern between partners, the person's coping mechanism because of that trauma, that would be what's considered battered spouse or battered partner syndrome.
And you're aware that that concept being traumatized by the battered spouse syndrome or the post-traumatic stress is relevant to a self-defense case in a
Yes.
criminal context.
Yes, I understand that.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, under the battered spouse syndrome, the person would experience a trauma or a situation in which they feared harm. And based on that fear of harm, they would react in a certain way that might not be understandable to other people. So their fear is based on the pattern of behavior between them and their partner. That might not be the case for another set of people.
Now, I know that Dr. Lenore Walker is the one who first uncovered this syndrome back in the 70s.
Her research study generated the term. She was interested in why battered women specifically at first, that was what was studied, didn't leave their partner because of course they're experiencing traumatic events, risks to their life, but then they didn't leave. So she undertook the original research study on that.
And just briefly touch on, because I know Dr. Brandon has this, there was a 3 stages that Dr. Walker developed for that syndrome.
I think you're referring to phases that a person may go through or the cycle of the relationship. That includes the tension building phase, in which there is the first instance that tension is building within the partner. There might be a change in tone, a signaling that there's a difference in agitation. The second is the true battering event. So something has happened between the partners that's violent in nature. And then third, there's the honeymoon phase, which is to keep the relationship intact. The batterer would engage in what's like called honeymoon behaviors, like trying to repair the relationship, apologize, essentially keep the victim from departing from the relationships.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you,
missed this one.
Brandon, apparently him and Dave is no longer exclusive, as Dave has begun his Tinder profile. So, but thank you, Brandon. And just if you are in the Minnesota area or wherever Dave is living, just be mindful. He's not fun to be around, according to Brandon. And
So the 3 phases.
Brandon is also correct. Just because you have a PhD, it doesn't make you a doctor.
Right.
Because teachers aren't doctors. I don't know why I mentioned teachers.
I don't either.
Apologize, essentially keep the victim from departing from the relationship. So those are 3 phases.
And is it fair to say that psychologically, the abuser, does alcohol often involved in the abuse?
Yes.
And as far as the victim that's getting abused, and you say it's a cycle, is the victim, when they go through that last stage, the honeymoon stage, are they thinking, okay, it's going to be better?
Yes, the hopefulness in that, trying to believe that the behavior has changed, that they're not going to be abused again, the hopefulness to maintain the relationship, to forgive. That's part of that last stage, phase 3, is maintaining a relationship.
I don't think I've asked this. Why would someone who has been exposed to intimate partner violence perceive the likelihood of a new violent event about to appear? Why would they perceive the likelihood of that violence differently than, say, a normal person?
Well, it speaks to the pattern. So any relationship will have its own special pattern, that you have things that only your partner knows about you, or certain looks that you give that mean something, and you learn that over time. So over a period of incidents, basically, the victim begins to perceive cues that would signal impending danger. Those cues could be really subtle, just a change in tone or some small behavior that might not mean much to another person, but it has preceded other violent acts. So for instance, if your husband decides that he is not going out that night, he might put on different clothes to stay home. And that could be a signal, like abuse and violence has occurred in his stay-at-home clothes, for instance. That might not mean much to another person because, again, it's specific to that dyad. Those 2 people know those patterns. So the victim may perceive a small...
If the abuser constantly demands the victim to change scenery so he doesn't get upset, constantly hinders his activities, never listens to what he wants to do, is that also a pattern that the victim would recognize? I would ask those questions as the state.
Yeah, and Nunya said something earlier I thought was dead on. Like, how does this all explain why she beat on Brian?
Yeah. Well, that's because her mom used to wear a pink tank top that she didn't like.
Oh, right.
Remember the
It was
childhood
the
trauma?
clothes.
Childhood trauma.
Right. Clothes are abusive.
Or subtle change in their partner's IQ because they've become hyper vigilant. The body knows when it's experienced a threat to itself, and it will take note. We record memories differently when we're at risk. So these subtle cues become very well memorized by somebody who's being victimized.
You know, this and battered spouse syndrome is a subset of post-traumatic stress disorder, which you diagnosed Sarah Boone with. When those personality changes occur and they persist after an individual has been exposed to this extreme stress, is that when the diagnosis occurs?
The changes would be as a result of the pattern. The person experiences a change like in their sleeping, in their hypervigilance. That's when you can diagnose it. So you can have a trauma or an experience of, scary incident, but it doesn't mean that you will absolutely have post-traumatic stress disorder. You have to have those reactive symptoms that would suggest that it's present.
In your opinion, and I know you've gone over this event with Sarah Boone, this February 23rd, 2020 event, is your opinion that she was suffering from battered spouse syndrome at the time of that event?
Yes, she had the patterns ingrained in her behavior that would be typical of a victim who's responding to traumatic events in a predictable way. So that would fit that.
Then it's fair to say that because of the intimate partner and the prior violence, that you would have a heightened sense of when danger was about to occur.
Yes.
When a threat was about to occur.
Yes.
A threat of danger.
That's right.
Now I want to talk about placating the abuser, a victim placating an abuser. Are there predictive cues which an abuser may exhibit to a victim that result in a high level of anxiety arousal in which the battered woman may attempt to reduce through several different means to delay the beating? Can you explain that?
Yes. So the phase of the relationship that starts with that tension building, that is a jumping off point potentially. So if you can stop the escalation, you might stay in phase one for a period of time. Phase one being that tension building phase and trying to reduce it and not allow it to escalate. So placating the abuser might include distraction. It could include substance use. It could include a change of scenery. There are a lot of things that a partner will learn to do so that they
Funny
don't
she
have the
just used
escalation.
that word.
What did
A
she say?
change of scenery. A
Oh.
change of scenery.
Good
Because
grief.
how many times did Sarah say that yesterday? And I'm not saying she was coached, but she was coached.
Yeah.
Into an abusive event, if possible. Doesn't always stop it.
Now, in reviewing all of the data, all the reports, medical records, and whatever reports you considered, videotape that you may have watched, as it relates specifically to Sarah Boone, are her words her power?
Her words, I would say, are the weapon that she has.
Explain that to me.
In reviewing the available
How about the
videos
baseball
that
bat?
I had to review, you would see that when Ms. Boone is a very
What?
It wasn't the baseball bat the weapon she had. Her words were the weapon she had. No. That's stage one in an abusive relationship. That's the tension builder. Remember, you just said that? No, because she can use it because she's defending herself. She beat him with a baseball bat. She had the weapon. She had him in a confined space and beat him. Can we just get to cross and hopefully they'll tear her a new one? I hope they will, because this is ridiculous. She literally had a weapon.
Literally. And you could argue the suitcase was a weapon too,
Yeah, but you can
or a restraint.
if you believe you're in an abusive relationship, you can psychologically terrorize your partner because it's your weapon to defend against his terrorism.
Brandon. He's not wrong. I admit. We women are crazy.
Yeah, that's why I don't even have a first wife.
Very stressed, when she's experiencing a high level of anxiety, she becomes short in her tone. You can hear that in her voice. There's a strain, sharper words come out. I think that that is the way that she would try to respond to Mr. Torres. You can hear that sharpness in her voice when she's very stressed out.
Now, would you agree that victims may exhibit a range of behaviors when they're suffering from intimate partner violence?
Yes,
Self-isolation,
yes,
suicidal thoughts,
yes,
substance abuse,
yes.
and there are often physical signs of injury such as bruising,
That's correct.
chronic fatigue,
Yes,
learned helplessness.
yes.
Can you tell, I know Dr. Brandon spoke on it, but could you tell us a little bit about that?
So learned helplessness is when you start to form the opinion that nothing's going to make any difference. It comes originally from an animal study in which dogs were shocked. And the research study indicated that even when dogs were given an opportunity to escape the environment in which they were being shocked, if they were shocked enough, they just stopped trying to escape. So even though they had an opportunity to do so, they did not do that. That's called learned helplessness. It's the idea or belief that what your actions are going to do are not going to make a difference. So don't try.
What are intrusive memories?
Intrusive memories are an element of post-traumatic stress disorder in which you don't want to be thinking of a traumatic event, but it intrudes on something else you're trying to do. Like maybe you're folding socks or something like that, just doing something mindless, and that's what takes over your thought process. It's not something that you're trying to think about. We could plan what we're thinking about, or sometimes if you're just having this intrusive experience, that's not what you were intending to think about at all.
Is that one of the conditions that someone may suffer when they have this syndrome of battered spouse?
Yes.
I know there can be triggers that bring on these memories. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Are there also symptoms of this syndrome where, like in the alcoholism, where you have denial that you're in the middle of this cycle?
Well, as part of the relationship, there's an element of pleasure. Like you have early on in the relationship something that binds you together. So you're remembering that, you're hoping for that. Even though the repeated cycle is going through the phases 1, 2, and 3, you keep hoping.
It's a debit card. The thing that binds them together is a debit card. And Sarah had one and Jorge didn't. That's what I really think it comes down to. Oh, my brain hurts.
For elements of that honeymoon phase, wishing that it was better. So it is like denial. You're imagining the way it used to be. You have a recollection of that person showing you positive behaviors, and you're hoping for that. I also think it is typical for victims to not reveal to other people that the abuse is going on. And it seems like denial. In other words, your coworkers ask you, like, are you okay? Did something happen to you? You're not likely to disclose that. That looks a lot like denial. It is a denial in public of some of the private issues that you're having in your relationship. And that's because it's embarrassing. It's revealing a loss of control to other people. It's revealing that things aren't perfect. You might even get feedback that you should leave your partner, and that's unwanted because you're already having that concern in your own mind about it. And so, it seems like denial on the outside to hide it.
Would you agree many people who suffer from this, they're minimizing what is happening to them?
Yes.
And they're numbing their emotions to it.
Well, to stay present and keep that relationship, it's very difficult for a lot of people because they're experiencing physical and emotional harm. So they want to numb it, because numbing it means that you can keep that relatedness no matter how bad it's getting.
Does some people with this syndrome disassociate?
Relevance. Approach.
I gotta speed this up and move her on.
Yeah.
Although we're not that far behind. I have had it on 1.25 the whole time, so.
Objective relevance is overruled.
That women often develop the defense mechanism of being able to psychologically detach from their body during a traumatic experience.
Some people do experience that.
What?
I'm just going to list some of the symptoms that you find in battered spouse women, and just to see if you agree with these. We talked about intrusive memories and flashbacks of the past traumatic events. You agree with that?
Yes.
The severe anxiety and hypervigilance,
Yes.
the panic attacks.
That is sometimes present. It depends on how the person experiences anxiety, but some do have panic attacks.
Very low self-esteem,
Yes.
poor body image,
Sometimes.
feeling that they have no control,
Yes.
sexual dysfunction,
It can be, particularly if the trauma includes sexualized attacks.
short-term memory problems and confusion.
Yes, that's part of PTSD sometimes.
But it's
And
also
they
a
can
part of
actually- they
drinking,
can actually
so
have
you're
physical health
blackout
problems
drunk and
chronic from the
forget what the F you did the day before. Oh, please, God, let the state bring up all the points when she couldn't remember taking the videos because she has post-traumatic stress. No, let's just play the videos. Do she sound frightened, or does she sound like she's very drunk? If you're that drunk, could that also, with your alcoholic disabusal syndrome, lead to blackouts and memory holes? Jeepers.
Yeah.
Attacks.
Short-term memory problems and confusion.
Yes, that's part of PTSD sometimes.
And they can actually have physical health problems from the chronic stress and physical violence.
That's correct.
Fear,
Yes,
constant fear.
that's correct.
Now, the abusive partner, the abuser, part of the abuse would be hitting, kicking, punching, choking, burning, and biting.
Approach.
What? Where's he? Were they biting each other?
And again, yes, go back to she was upstairs believing they were going to have smexy time when he got out of there.
Right. 'Cause
I don't
that's
know
what you
how.
do.
I don't know how many of you, and I know we have a lot of people who have been in bad relationships in the chat. How many of you were expecting a smexy time? Well, it wouldn't be a voluntary smexy time.
Right.
She claims she did, yes.
I don't know.
And remember, the scratches on his back was from smexy time. That's what she said in her interview.
This witness is more than wearing my brain out. I feel like she's. I don't know.
I hope they
Where
have a
did she
good
go to
rebuttal
school?
witness.
It's
Washington
this is
State.
bad.
Washington State, go
Rain?
Seagulls.
I don't know.
Seagulls.
They have rain.
I can make a seat, sir.
Part I'm asking about common things that occur by the abusive partner towards the victim that create this intimate partner violence or create this syndrome in the woman. Hitting,
Yes, that could be an overt act.
kicking,
Yes,
punching,
yes,
choking,
yes,
burning,
yes,
Burning.
using weapons to hurt you,
yes,
a knife,
correct.
curtain rod,
Yes,
threatening to hurt you. your
How about a
children, and your
baseball bat?
pets.
yes,
How about a baseball bat?
Belittling
Is that a
and
problem?
humiliating you,
that's correct.
taking your car keys.
Oh, they just got in the dogs.
Yeah. But all of this can be just as well used to describe Sarah. I hope the state is up for it.
Belittling and humiliating you,
That's correct.
taking your car keys,
That would be considered a form of control. So yes,
controlling your money,
yes,
control where you go and who you see
correct.
and who you can talk
He
to,
was
That's right.
force you to have sex when you don't.
What is he?
he didn't have control of the money because it was her debit card.
Right.
Yeah, and she spilled soup on her leg because she was so drunk. And what was it she described that injury to her leg? It wasn't a knife wound, but all of a sudden it was.
Right.
Oh,
This is. Yes.
this is stupider than I thought.
But the thing is, the jury hasn't heard that.
Yes, they did. They heard it yesterday. But it's
the-
it's for up to the state to, just like they did this morning, make this witness also testify. Well, Sarah had a lot of bad behaviors as well. He couldn't even have his phone. She called his family and yelled in the background.
Right.
State,
Yeah.
ask those questions. Ask those questions.
I want to.
Yes.
Stalking you,
Yes.
slapping you,
Correct.
Do you agree victims that suffer from this abuse experience feelings of anger,
Yes, that can
I'm
be
feeling anger.
in some of the phases. So,
sadness,
yes.
hopelessness,
Yes.
worthlessness,
Correct.
intense feelings of fear?
Yes.
Abusers have a tendency to have low self-esteem themselves.
Overruled.
Abusers.
Overruled.
The abuser can have low self-esteem themselves,
Yes.
have a desire for power and control,
Correct.
have a tendency to use alcohol or drugs.
Yes.
Abusers oftentimes have temper,
That's correct.
become jealous easily,
Yes.
very possessive.
Can be.
The victims can suffer from severe psychological distress.
That's correct.
Is that what Sarah Boone suffered from?
Yes.
Just end it. Say you're done.
Yes.
Oh God, they're bringing in pictures.
Yeah, we're getting all the pictures again.
Ugh, good. Are we past 2 hours yet? I've got some curses coming.
Showing you, is it 14, 5 photographs? Did you watch the video of the TV, the back in TV?
I did.
You considered that in your analysis and your diagnosis?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you some pictures. Exhibit 12. I believe she's testified. This is where the curve line. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Exhibit 11. Are you familiar with this photograph over here?
Yes.
Exhibit 10, which is your arm. Are you familiar with that photograph?
Yes.
Exhibit 9, picture of the blood knee. Exhibit 8, picture of her black eye.
Yes. See.
Picture, exhibit 7, picture of her.
Need a break
Yes,
from this
Brandon.
anyway.
Yes, Brandon, we can go back to pretend this is a Christian channel again and help you pack for Bible camp. I have a suitcase. I will stuff you in it and see if my baseball bat would fit. Just to be helpful. So maybe we can get Tom to join us and he can stuff you in there with a golf club. But back to Christian channel.
Sarah's lips and like an eyebrow.
Yes.
And this is a composite exhibit 6, which is of the stab to a button. You familiar with those?
Yes.
And I don't know if you've seen this exhibit 5 is where she's feeling some soup as a result of his behavior.
I'm not sure if I've seen this photo, but I've seen a medical record associated with that.
Of that burn. Exhibit 4,
Yes.
familiar with that? It was like exhibit 3. She was slapped on the tongue.
Yes.
Exhibit 2, she was bruising in his book.
Yes.
If you consider all those photographs informing your opinions that you've expressed here today as it relates to Sarah Boone?
Yes, under the substantiation that she has indeed experienced past instances of intimate partner violence against her.
Is it fair to say that it takes time?
How can you
A
tell?
number of
How can you tell it wasn't because she was drunk, fell over, spilled stuff on herself, walked into something sharp? I have, well, not at the moment because I've been sick, so I haven't been to the gym. I normally have bruises on me.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
I
I
walk-
bruise very easily.
Yeah, I walk into the rack after I've been lifting or my hands are roughed up. You just looked at this and said, clear signs of partner violence. Could it be him putting wounds on you because he was defending himself? Did you ever think about that? I think, and I don't know this lady, she can be the bestest in the world, but to me, she comes off as one of those women, trust all women. And I really don't like that, especially when we know violence against men in relationships are highly underreported. And it's very, very detrimental to men's psyche because no one trusts them. So they will rather just eat it up and then they'll eat a bullet at some point.
All right.
times to visit with someone like this to build trust?
Yes, traumatized people are slow to disclose information. You have to build rapport. You have to make sure that they experience you discussing other things without an emotional reaction. They feel easily judged, as we mentioned, have defensive denial, things like that. So you need to build good rapport in doing an assessment with somebody that's experienced trauma.
So a lot of times they're very slow to open up and tell you about the abuse.
That is correct.
And they'll actually often lie about it.
Deny it, yes, and just say that that's not the issue or they're fine. So oftentimes I'll have an evaluation request come from an attorney who's having difficulty interacting with their client, and then ultimately it's a result of trauma.
Now I know that you.
No,
you everything
no,
that
no,
you've seen or not
no,
times. Is there any-
no
did you feel like
effing
you
way.
had enough-
It wasn't because of her trauma that she had problems interacting with her attorneys. Read the effing letters. She clearly states it's because they don't show her 100% attention all the time. I should be everywhere. I'm the most important person. We have the last attorney who said if she doesn't get her way, she walks up and leave. This is her 8 attorneys for, let's be honest, has nothing to do with her trauma making it impossible for her to build relationship. She doesn't want it because if they don't go with Sarah's wishes, they just go away. This is BS. I really hope the state can ask, have you read all the letters she wrote court where she clearly showed she's a narcissistic? I'm sorry.
Well, to be fair, you guys, I just had a rousing conversation of is lava rock acid? And it made more sense being told by my feral that lava is in fact rock acid. And how dare I say it's melted rock? You know, I learned more than I did with this.
I don't. Did this woman actually have all of the facts?
No, because that's what she said.
No.
Did you look at all the evidence she saw? I saw a fair amount of the evidence. She didn't even see all the pictures that he just put in front of her.
Right.
Now, I know that you viewed everything, and I know you've seen her 9 times. Is there any? Did you feel like you had enough time? Was 9 visits enough time for you to feel like you had enough time and information to form the opinions that you've expressed here today and give to the group?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
Come
Any
on, state.
cross-examination?
Please make this good.
Good afternoon, Dr. Harper.
Good afternoon.
So you've done some evaluation work on battered spouse syndrome for a prosecution in the past?
No,
Have you done insanity evaluations for the prosecution in the past?
I have been called to testify about that.
So you understand when the government obtains a court order for their expert to come in and do an evaluation, it's for one evaluation, correct?
I believe that you're saying that the government can retain their own expert. Yes,
No, I mean, what I'm talking about is you just went through that you had 9 visits with Ms. Boone,
I
correct?
did. Yes,
And that was over the course of 8 different days because 2 of those visits were morning and afternoon sessions, correct?
that's right.
And what we are trying to help you have the jury understand is that when you get hired by the government and the court gives you an order to go evaluate somebody, you get one crack at the apple. Is that your understanding from your past work working for the government?
No, that's not always correct. There are many instances in competency evaluations where evaluators will request additional visits if they cannot determine their opinion on the first visit.
All right. Specifically when it comes to an affirmative defense, such as battered spouse evidence and insanity, what is your understanding and your expertise?
What is my understanding of the issue? Oh,
Judge, the question.
Legal objection.
Objection.
Legal grounds.
He asked a question about battered spouse and
Approach.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, 9 visits and no, 8 visits in 9 days. Was it that, or 8 visits in 9 days? 9
9 visits in 8 days because one was morning, afternoon.
Just the same.
How,
When it comes to an affirmative defense such as battered spouse syndrome being used for self-defense or, not and, insanity, it requires a court order for the state to go have an evaluator go, right?
yes.
All right. Now, what are the agreed upon criteria for battered spouse syndrome?
Well, you would evaluate if the person is indeed suffering from a behavioral response like a mental disorder. So first of all, has the person demonstrated that they've got a behavioral change? And is it in response to a violent act? Do they perceive threat where they've been exposed in the past? So pattern of violence that has repeated.
Does control over another person in an intimate relationship have anything to do with it?
Yes, it can.
Does isolation have anything to do with it?
Yes.
And by control, I mean controlling who you go see, who you hang out with, so on and so forth.
Yes.
And could it involve controlling personal items of the other person as well?
Yes, it can.
So that's what I'm asking. Like in the DSM-5 TR, I believe you pulled up narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes.
And so when you do that, it pulls up and it says there's 9 criteria and 5 of those criteria must be met to make a diagnosis for narcissistic personality disorder, correct?
That's right.
Now, battered spouse syndrome is not recognized by the DSM-5 TR, correct?
No, it's not a diagnosis. You wouldn't use it as a diagnosis.
And what I'm asking is, even though we haven't written it down in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and I mean the like the Ohio State University or something, is it written down anywhere?
Jamie!
One psychologist or
got a
psychiatrist
shout-out.
rely upon a recipe or a list of criteria that everyone else would be using in your field as well?
There is no standardized approach you must follow. In other words, sometimes if we have a statute, for instance, it would identify what we must investigate. It doesn't exist like that. There's no statute directing it.
And there's nothing written down anywhere that says, of these 9 criteria, these things must exist. Controlling your partner, isolating your partner, beating your partner, so on and so forth, correct?
That's right.
All right. Now, this kind of abuse can come in the form of emotional or mental abuse outside completely of physical or sexual abuse, correct?
So that is a component. You can have extreme mental abuse occur of a person, yes.
And if that person responds to that environmental stimuli of whatever it is the partner is saying or doing to them, they may internally view that as traumatic,
They could.
or they may not.
That's right.
It's entirely possible for 2 people to be in a 3.5-year relationship that has physical violence, and neither one of them feel traumatized by that. Is that correct?
That's right. If they have enough supportive or positive experiences that would negate that ratio, so of positive to negative, they may feel okay.
And a man can be subjected to this sort of trauma, whether it be physical, emotional, or sexual by an intimate partner as well, correct?
That's right.
And it's basically it's unique to each relationship, right?
That is right.
But trauma is in the eye of the beholder. Is that fair? Whether a negative experience traumatizes somebody is going to be in the eye of the person who experienced that stimuli, correct?
I only partially agree with you. It's a complicated answer because some of the manifestations of trauma are behavioral. So for instance, when I evaluate veterans who have returned and they may not know that they've been traumatized, their bodily responses that include like difficulty concentrating, they can't sleep, they're hypervigilant. The PTSD diagnosis encompasses outward manifestations. So even though they don't acknowledge trauma, you can still identify it as a clinician.
But still, somebody like a homicide detective or a homicide prosecutor can go to scenes where there are dead bodies, go to autopsies where there are dead bodies, and not walk away with any trauma, correct? Whereas somebody else might.
Right. The environmental I guess, cues for that person, and also working with law enforcement, they become seasoned to micro traumas. So the first, almost every police officer can remember the first dead body they've seen. So it's in their memory, and then they become accustomed to seeing gruesome scenes.
Is that like when
I
you
s-
get stuck behind people with 10 item or like 15 items in the 10 item lane? Because
no, I think that's a microaggression. I saw my first dead body when I was 9 years old. It was an old veterinarian who had a heart attack, and my brother that said, "Go touch him. I don't want to do it." So I had to go touch him. He was really cold. Yeah, I can remember that to this day. I still haven't tried to pack any girlfriends into a suitcase unless she asked for it.
Right.
what the hell is a micro damn trauma?
A
No,
micro trauma
seriously.
is, well, this is what's wrong with psychology today. Everyone is sick. That's the problem. Because this
Yeah,
lady, she could get a blank piece of paper and diagnose it with whatever you want.
Yep.
pretty much. I mean,
That's her
and-
job.
Yeah.
But I do like how she is like, no, men really don't like, and some people are psychologically more strong. Again, the reason that we have sociopaths is because, in the olden time, we needed people that could go raid a village, get us supplies, and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, and that was before the kidnification of the society where everyone is a victim. Again, I would
Fix your
Well,
glasses, ma'am.
Valhalla. How is your PTSD stacking up to this lady's micro traumas? I'm pretty sure your PTSD is just sitting here thinking, yes, of course, Sarah Boone has exactly the same symptoms as me. Go F yourself with this diagnosis, you talentless paid hack.
Have
Fix your
increased tolerance over
glasses.
time because it's part of their job. It may not be part of their intimate relationship that they have with someone else.
Now, you brought up veterans. Is something common with PTSD with veterans? Something like firecrackers may set them off because it reminds them of acts of war.
That's right.
You're not suggesting to the jury today that if somebody who returns with PTSD from service and hears firecrackers is justified in going outside and just shooting bullets everywhere, correct?
No, that's not what I said.
I'm not saying
Come on
you did.
now.
Okay.
What this battered spouse syndrome evidence is helpful for is not that subjective mindset, but rather helping to explain the objective circumstances that are presented to somebody and how it might be different from somebody with those experiences. They may view something objectively different.
I partially disagree with your question because I would say that there are incidents or actual events between partners that would be a factual thing, something has happened. And then the person subjectively experiences that as, intrusive or controlling or traumatic. So that is the person's felt or subjective experience. The objective part is what happened.
But again, as a forensic psychologist, you're familiar with the justified use of force instruction, correct?
I'm not a lawyer though, so I'm aware of it, but I cannot debate fine points of that with you. I'm sorry.
I'm just helping. I'm trying to understand what you said before. Is there a subjective component, whether or not a person believes subjectively that they need to use some sort of force, deadly or non-deadly? You agree with that, correct?
I do.
And then there's also a second component that it's objectively reasonable to the ordinary person to use force, correct?
I understand what you're saying, yes.
And what I believe I heard you mention earlier about battered spouse syndrome was originally was meant to help understand why people stay in these relationships.
Originally, yes.
Because it may not just be intuitive to somebody who doesn't understand these things, why somebody who is abused time and time and time again would remain in that relationship, correct?
That's right.
And again, and I know you're not a lawyer, but if the law has evolved about retreat and not having to retreat and so on and so forth, that kind of changes some of the lens of this, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object.
Approach. Check. Question withdrawn. You may proceed.
All right. So you would agree that hypothetically, if somebody is running down their partner, saying negative things about them, telling them they are unattractive, telling them things that would potentially hurt their feelings, that could be an element of control of a verbally abusive relationship.
It could.
Propping one up, hypothetically saying, I'm the best thing that has ever happened to you, you'll never do better than me. Is that a potential component of the control that one in an abusive relationship might exert over an intimate partner?
Yes, to try to not encourage their partner to leave them. Yeah.
Considering gifts, hypothetically, that one partner has given to another partner, but considering it still to be your property because you gave it to them, is that a form of potential exertion of control over an intimate partner when you give somebody hypothetically a bike, but still consider it your own bike?
I mean, I don't think that's strong evidence of that. I think that it does happen in relationships and people do that in general.
I mean,
The state of Florida
yeah,
is paying,
technically
I
the
believe,
taxpayers.
I believe up to $5,000 for this particular expert.
And she did not like that amount, apparently. Yeah, the bike.
But I wouldn't say that's like really specific to this.
How about hypothetically exerting control over your intimate partner's identification papers, such as a birth certificate?
So that can happen. People will hide things that are required for work. For instance, like your driver's license or things like that.
Now I'm asking yes or no questions. If Mr. Owens would like you to elaborate further, he's going to have that opportunity in a little bit. Okay. Hypothetically, if one partner destroys another partner's belongings, is that a potential example of exerting control in a relationship?
Yes.
Thank you. Hypothetically, is threatening to or actually using legal process as a threat against your intimate partner in a potential indicia of controlling your partner? For instance, X, Y, or Z, or I'm going to get you arrested.
Yes, I would agree that happens.
Now, I assume you would agree that this cycle of violence that we've described, the tension building, the blow up, and then the honeymoon phase, you would agree that just one of those cycles could be enough to give somebody a traumatic experience if they took it as a traumatic experience.
Yes.
The defendant described her first date with Mr. Torres to you, did she not?
She did.
And at the time of this first date, they had obviously just met that night at a bar, correct?
Right.
They were not financially intertwined, correct?
That's right.
They shared no children in common.
That's right.
They did
Wait.
not live together.
Correct.
Is she talking about Sarah and Jorge? They didn't live together. They weren't financially entwined.
Well, when they first got together and she was still married, no.
Oh,
Although she likes to say she was separated, but she and Brian Boone were still going to marriage counseling. So,
right.
you know,
Okay. I got the timeline wrong on the first date. Okay.
And after this description that she provided you, which included him smashing her phone, correct?
Yes.
Hitting her, first time she'd ever been hit in her life, correct?
Yes.
And making her crouch in like a fetal position on the porch for several hours to the point where it hurt her back, correct?
Yes.
Threatened to sodomize her.
Correct.
What? Okay.
what? Okay.
Now let's just say that again.
So thank you, Katie Powers, for joining the Church of Mo. We appreciate your, joining the Church of Mo, and you do not have to pass out any of the church bulletins yet. So there you are.
Yes, Baker, I know what it is. But I just don't remember hearing it in this case.
So this intelligent, overachieving, honor roll student, highly empathic woman met George. He broke her phone, scared her to death, threatened to, well, what he did. And she's like, he's the love of my life. We're going to move in together. Do what now? I mean, I can understand love bombing and that, but this sounds like the date from hell and you call 911 and you maybe don't try swiping right again.
Yeah.
It's
The point where
okay.
it hurt
No
her
one
back.
reads the bulletins unless they're
Yes.
bored with the
Threatened to
sermon anyway.
sodomize her.
Correct.
And she described that she was all bruised up, correct?
Yes.
After that, this is the first time she had ever met him, correct?
I believe so.
There was a second date, correct?
Yes.
Despite not having any of that intertwinement that we went through prior to this description, correct?
That's right.
Now, it is possible under what we've discussed, right? Just that quick one date can be that buildup of tension and blow up, correct?
Yes.
But it's different hypothetically than saying a spouse who is financially dependent on his or her other spouse in a 20-year marriage with a house full of kids than a first date, correct? You would agree in severity, in the intertwinement, there's a difference.
There's a difference in intertwinement. The pattern can be exactly the same.
Now, of course, there are many different reasons why somebody will stay in a relationship that, when perceived from the outside, others would say is abusive, correct?
That's right.
The defendant described that she felt like she was making Mr. Torres a better person, correct?
That's right.
A better father, correct?
Right.
A better ex-husband.
With phone calls. Yes.
And she would tell him to call his children,
That's right.
make sure that he sent them Christmas gifts,
Yes.
and make sure he sent his ex-wife money when she asked, correct?
Yes.
So you would agree those are indicia, or indicators, sorry.
Understand?
I know you knew. That perhaps she wasn't necessarily financially dependent on Mr. Torres, correct? I'm not saying conclusion, but those are indicators. If you're saying, please spend your money elsewhere, that I don't need your money, correct?
No, because even if there was money that was needed by Ms. Boone, her tendency to put the needs of her partner before her would direct her to do exactly that, like make him better, make him have the availability to visit his children, send them presents, even if she's the one that needed the money.
And in her perspective, Mr. Torres needed her to do this to make him a better person, correct?
I believe that, yes.
How many years of her adult life did she describe working?
I don't think she gave it a specific quantity. We just went through a variety of her jobs that she had in the past.
And, she was low 40s when she met you? 4 years ago?
That's right.
So she had been 18 for probably about 24 years. Did she give you a 24, right? 24 plus 18, 42?
Oh, you said for 24 years, and that's why I was confused. You can't be 18 for 24 years, but
Did
24 years ago, I would agree.
her work history kind of flesh out to be 24 years is what I'm asking?
I'm not certain.
And at the time, in the apartment in 2020, she had not been working, correct?
That's right.
And had not been working for some time.
That's right.
And what she was doing was living off of the settlement that she had been bought out of with her husband, was lump sum, plus $1,000 a month in alimony and $100 a month in child support, correct?
Yes.
And it was Mr. Torres who would work, correct?
He worked at Ace Hardware.
When he would show up.
Right.
Sometimes he didn't show up, is what she indicated, correct?
Yes.
Because of his drinking problems.
Yes.
Did she describe to you, well, let me strike that. She did describe to you one instance, at least, where violence occurred in front of her child, correct?
Yes.
And that her child had gone to school and reported it, correct?
Yes.
And you understand as a forensic psychologist that teachers are mandatory reporters, correct?
That's right.
Did you review any DCF records in this case?
No, I didn't receive any DCF record.
Did Ms. Boone ever indicate to you at any point in time she became too afraid to let Lucas come over to the house?
Yes, there were times where she would ask Mr. Boone, so Brian Boone, to not bring him there.
And Mr. Boone was aware of this because she would say things like that, correct?
Yes.
And at different times, she told you that she would go over to Mr. Boone's house to escape the violence of Mr. Torres.
That's right.
And February 24th of 2020, the child was scheduled to be picked up by Ms. Boone, correct?
That's right.
Despite everything that she was aware of and what Mr. Brian Boone was aware of, correct?
Right.
And you saw in her police interview that she swore on the life of her son that she was telling him the truth, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Why can't they testify to that? Because we saw it in the interview that she swore on the life of her son, and she lied.
Do you have the
She's a lying
timestamp
liar
of how
lies.
far
Crap.
back we were?
I just
Sorry.
closed it. It was like 13 minutes behind.
Okay, I'll just do 1351.
Perfect.
February 24th of 2020, the child was scheduled to be picked up by Ms. Boone, correct?
That's right.
Despite everything that she was aware of and what Mr. Brian Boone was aware of, correct?
Right.
And you saw in her police interview that she swore on the life of her son that she was telling him the truth, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Object.
Approach.
I guess we won't be objecting on children. Mr. J is making me very nervous that he has just boilerplate.
Rephrase it. She swore on her son's life that it was not intentional that she ended up killing Mr. Torres, correct?
That,
I object.
Roach.
Play the video. She
Right.
swore on her son's life it was not intentional.
I'm gonna pop out.
Just
Thank
run it
you
at
so
two.
much.
At two, you'll catch it before they come back.
But
Thank you, Marissa, for helping out today.
absolutely. Even though I screwed it up, but you know.
Well, there's 123 that found their way anyway, so that's nice.
Yeah, I
Object
put
to
it
same
in
questions, correct?
Discord.
Members of
So
the jury, questions are not evidence, and you're not to give them any weight whatsoever. Mr. J, you may proceed.
She's quote unquote swore on her child's life that it was not intentional. That, correct?
before I answer, I'd like you to direct me to that part of her interview.
Click
So
the sprocket again.
It's in video.
Oh,
Some of Miss Boone's diagnoses predated her relationship with Mr. Torres, correct?
yes,
And so when diagnoses predate a violent intimate partner relationship, there is an independent cause, even though they may then later contribute to phenomenon, correct?
well, I wouldn't say that all mental disorders have an independent cause. Sometimes they're spontaneous or biological in nature.
Well, let's talk about hers. I mean, you're familiar with her prior diagnoses, and you went through her childhood, so on and so forth, correct?
I did.
So she was bringing some things with her prior to Mr. Torres' relationship, correct?
She had these.
Also, yes or no, ma'am?
Yes, she did.
Thank you. You reviewed some Advent health records, correct, of hers,
Yes,
and some Aspire records of hers, correct?
yes,
And you agree that there are times in the Advent health records where she goes to the hospital and then leaves before getting treated, correct?
yes,
And there is a time when she goes to the hospital where she is described, their words, not mine, as having ETOH on board.
yes.
Do you understand what ETOH means?
In a medical record, you would use that shorthand for alcohol.
Or ethanol, right?
Yes,
Drinking alcohol, not the other stuff.
correct.
And in the records that you reviewed from Aspire, she came with complaints of depression in January of 2018, correct?
That's right.
And ethanol or alcohol is a central nervous system depressant, correct?
Yes.
And I know you're a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, so let me know if I'm pushing you too far and you're not going to answer. But you are familiar generally with the effects ethanol has on the body.
Generally, yes,
And you diagnoses of alcohol abuse disorder.
I do.
And in your professional life or personal life, are you familiar with the standard serving size of drinks when you're evaluating somebody's drinking? For instance, hey, I only drink 2 drinks a day. All right, well, are they 64-ounce mugs of beer or are they 12-ounce? So are you familiar in that context?
It might be a question I would ask during evaluation. What are you referring to? Is it a mixed drink? Is it a shot? I try to identify that.
And you ever ask?
A mixed
someone
drink
says
isn't a
they drink
shot.
2 glasses of wine. Well, how big are the glasses of wine?
Sometimes.
And
where are we going with this? I mean, the woman obviously didn't research very much of the case information.
No, because she should just get a diagnosis that said she has PTSD. Mo,
Yes.
do you claim that you would do work for only 5K taxpayer money?
No.
No. I totally agree with this doctor. Give me the diagnosis and I'll fill out the formula.
Yeah, but I don't think the state is crossing effectively. I mean, they are poking holes, but again, they need to say, you didn't evaluate all the information in this case before you came to this conclusion, did you? No, did you
No.
pick out anything, only what the, defense had you look at?
Yeah, and did you ever evaluate if Sarah Boone could have the traits of an abuser?
Yeah, and the whole thing where like her words were the only weapon she had. No, she had a suitcase and a bat. That's why
Yeah.
you're here, ma'am. Did you read the case files? And it does, I did like that the state pulled out that she went to visit her 9 times. They had to continue to try to get her to use that overact, and they weren't getting it. So they had to keep
No,
going
but
back.
I think Jemima is right. Let's see if he can land this. I think he's
Yes.
shot a few air balls, but he's also shown that she doesn't really know what she's talking about.
No. Not to mention first date like that, red flags, I am not seeing you anymore. But,
But
you know, she
remember
found a love
yesterday she
connection.
testified the first time she met him, he was such a gentleman. He complimented her, the way he looked at her, even though she was at the bar in her gym clothes. She never said, "Oh, by the way," and then he just stamped me with a right just in my between the eyes.
Yeah, that is so weird. So I'm sure the psychologist would say, well, she's still denying what went on in their relationship. Ugh, let's keep going.
And is your understanding that 5 ounces is the standard serving of wine since it's about 12% alcohol?
I'm not sure what the standard size is, but I would ask regarding like a wine glass.
And in January of
How big of a
2018, when
wine
she
glass?
came in crying and complaining of symptoms consistent with depression, she had a blood alcohol level of 0.165, correct?
I believe so.
And in October of 2018, when she ended up going to Aspire, when she was found stumbling by police, she had a breath alcohol of 0.185.
I'm reacting to your description of her stumbling by police. I know she approached police for help. So
I'm reacting. Did you read it or didn't you read it?
She's like, oh no, I forgot that in my binder of knowing things and looking smart.
Yeah, I put up 25 binders and didn't use them because I just put them there so I can say stuff.
So there have been 2 sets of records, but I believe you may have the same set that I received on September 27 of 24. Can you turn to page 21 of 57 of the Aspire records?
mine aren't numbered, but I will.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
For the love of Cheetos, ma'am. You should have already read these.
Yeah.
You may.
What I'm showing you is what is page 2157 on records from Aspire that was provided to me by the defense on September 27th, 2024. And just at the top, you read the first of the 4 lines.
All right, Judge, I would ask that she be allowed to read that entire paragraph. Under the rule of completeness.
Approach.
Why should that be important that she gets to read? He asked her a specific number.
Probably because it's going to say that Sarah was still the big sad.
Speed it up.
Oh,
We don't have to be 15 minutes behind.
oh, you are right. We do not have to be 15 minutes behind. We endeavor to be on top of things.
It's just so at the break we can probably start out and we'll only be 5 minutes late when we end. His objection was that he wanted her to read the entire paragraph.
And again, when there are so many core morbidity or morbidities, oh gosh, I can't say that word today. When there are so many aligning factors between PTSD and substance abuse, what made you pick PTSD? Just because Sarah said she was abused? And again,
Thank you. All right, October of 2018, there was a second visit to Aspire, and that was based upon her being found stumbling by law enforcement with a .185, correct? And that's
She walked up. Okay. So I'd have to say no, the way you phrased the question.
Ma'am, Boone was stumbling due to her level of impairment, Pren .185.
Yes, I would agree.
Is that part of the records you relied upon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Why are you then saying you can't? this makes you disingenuous. This makes you unbelievable.
When you talked to Ms. Boone about that, she kind of just described an event of June of 2018 and blurring those two events. Did she not?
No, she told me she had two different Baker acts.
Did she describe it as being June of 2018?
I'll have to reference my interview note to find that if you would like me to.
No. Do you remember giving a deposition on October 1st at the state attorney's office downstairs?
I do.
And at that point in time, and I'll ask opposing party, you want me to show her prior statement before I ask her about it?
I think she's got a deposition.
Do you have your transcript?
I do.
Just
So for the record, it's page 34.
How do you have 6 damn binders for this case?
Well, this is a deposition. And I don't know
She's
what the Baker Act
experiencing a
is.
micro trauma.
She described it as June of 2018.
That's what I said in my deposition, that she was describing her experience in June of 18.
And she described this.
Baker's Act is, I believe, in Florida, and if a police officer or even a family member is worried about your personal safety, in that, i.e., you might hurt or delete yourself or anything like that, they can involuntarily commit you for, I think, 72 hours. Just to make
so
sure
it's
that
the Karen Reed thing. Oh, we're afraid she's going to self-delete. We're going to put you in the hospital for long enough to hide your tail light.
yes.
Thank you. Imagine I am the father of the...
Going to the hospital to find a
You
pastor,
are.
correct?
Yes.
And ends up going to what we call Lakeside Den and Aspire now, right?
Yes.
And then what you described when she was talking about more of the violence that occurred specifically regarding a significant episode of Jorge driving her roughly in the car, so on and so forth, correct?
Yes.
All right. Those were two separate incidences. January, when she came looking for the pastor, correct?
So I'm just clarifying that there's a record that we started with this conversation from October of 2018. And there is a description of her trying to go to the hospital to seek a counselor. So those are two different instances.
In January of 2018, when she went to the hospital crying and signs of depression,
Bless you.
she indicated that was because her husband and son had gone out of town and she was feeling lonely and sad about having lost her job a few weeks earlier, right?
There were numerous stressors there, yes.
Nothing mentioned about any problems with somebody named Mr. Jorge or George Torres, correct?
You're talking about January?
Yes, ma'am.
You got a PhD and you can't follow along. How did you ever do those big classroom settings with 45 people in it? Yeah, and that's why she's trying to say, oh, I don't agree on your narrative, but wasn't what it said. Yeah, but I don't like I like it. And why go to the again? Jorge was the bane of her existence, but she was showing all the
The
signs
hospital
before she met him.
records are not referencing her relationship with George on the January date.
What? Why didn't
Now,
you just say?
talking about February 23rd, 2020 with Ms. Boone, you talked to her about that on several occasions, correct?
I did.
And part of one of those conversations, at least, was about an incident that she indicated had happened the night before February 23rd, 2020, correct?
Yes.
And she indicated and told you that she had been dragged down the stairs the night before the suitcase incident, correct?
That's right.
And in part of your review of this case, you reviewed all the crime scene photos, correct?
Yes.
And those include photographs of Ms. Boone, correct?
Yes.
And were there any indications in the photographs of injuries on her consistent with being dragged down the stairs of carpet?
Not, I didn't see inside her scalp. So I didn't see photos of inside, her hair follicles and this area of her head.
As opposed to the
Stop.
outside of her scalp. Inside her scalp would be her skull, you daggone.
and stop trying to. I know you are a hack who get paid to say what the defense wants, but you're hurting the defense by sitting here and being obtuse.
And if she got dragged down the stairs, hitting each stair progressively, she would have bruising either up her front, or down her side, or a bunch of different bruises, especially with how easily she bruised.
Yeah.
Giblets.
Of her head. On her outward body, there were no indications of that.
So just say no.
Did you ask her how it was that she was injured during this dragging down the stairs?
I don't think I went through specific injuries to her. No.
Do you agree that alcohol intoxication affects the credibility of a historian that's providing history to you, patient or a client?
If they're actively intoxicated, yes.
We had talked. Well,
The hell?
Had talked about.
So a drunk
So-
who was blackout drunk can remember everything a year later when they're not drunk anymore. This
Where
is your
is this
T.U.
woman
Dr.
from?
Muffin.
Yes, it also, affects how they remember things. And if she does have narcissistic traits, you have to assume that she is going to put herself in the best light. Giblets and Jehoshaphat's. I am trying not to curse, but doggone it. You are not supposed to be on the desk, sir.
Narcissistic personality disorder earlier,
Yes.
and that is a recognized diagnosis in the DSM-5-TR.
Need an emotional support dingus.
And there's 9 of those, correct? 9 traits?
Are you talking about the criterion of narcissistic personality disorder? Yes.
Like page 761 on your hard copy?
Thank you. All right.
Was I close? I have a digital copy.
760, but
One of the criteria is has a grandiose sense of self-importance. For example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements, correct?
yes.
2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, correct?
Yes.
3, belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people, or institutions, correct?
So 3, just caveat, it says believes, not belief, but the rest of what you said I agree with is the criterion.
4 requires excessive admiration.
Yes.
5 has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations, correct?
Yes.
6 is interpersonally exploitive, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends, correct?
Is interpersonally exploitative. Agree.
7 lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, correct?
Yes.
8 is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, correct?
Yes.
9 shows arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes.
Yes.
Now, you believe that she has traits of that disorder, correct?
Yes.
Grandiose sense of self-importance?
There are indications that she feels like that or has expressed that before.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love?
No.
You remember going to the state attorney's office on October 1st, 2024 and giving a deposition?
I do.
This is the right one. Put it up against.
Yes.
And you swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, correct?
Okay, yeah, this sounds like everything she has. And yeah, she doesn't think that she's entitled to this love. She's entitled to this overarching fantasy. She is such a good person that once she puts all the work into George, it's like a vending machine, and she's going to put, little Sarah coins in and get the perfect boyfriend because that's what she's entitled to after all the work she's put into George.
Yeah, and that's exactly where you need to go down this route. Just make this hack say, "Oh, yeah, I lied again."
Yeah. Or I didn't agree with that because you said, something slightly wrong grammatically.
And referring to page 89, lines 18 through 20. Let me know when you're ready. Are you ready?
Yes.
Did you give the following answer to the following question? Preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love? And your answer was yes.
I did answer yes there.
But not today.
She does not, according, in your estimation, does not believe that she is special and unique and can only associate with high status people, correct?
No.
Does not require excessive admiration, correct?
Correct.
Does have a sense of entitlement?
Yes.
Is not interpersonally exploitive?
Correct. It is not.
What?
What? In what world?
And when discussing whether or not she lacked empathy or was
Brian, I need money. My account's overdrawn. Brian, don't bring the kid over here. George is in a bad mood. Brian.
I'm gonna lose it today.
You and me both.
unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others, you indicated that that might be the case, but it's not intentional.
In other words, she's not aware if she's inconveniencing others.
So there was 3 of those traits, correct?
Yes.
Not 5, which would be required, correct? For diagnosis of the personality disorder.
If that were the correct diagnosis, you would need 5.
All right. During your conversations with Ms. Boone, the defendant in this case, she explained to you that cheating to her means when Mr. Torres would look at pornography.
And Baker, that's for you.
Thank you, Jemima, for most worth your money.
Yes. We got whatever gummy this chick had, I want one.
It's not legal with weed in California.
But she's in Washington.
No,
So-
she lives in the Panhandle. She got her degree in
Oh,
Washington.
in Florida?
Yeah, the Washington
legal if you
Panhandle
have a
isn't that
card.
well known. I know the Panhandle, and I'm not sure I know anything about Washington State other than it's for hippies and Starbucks.
True.
Pornography, correct?
Correct.
Not a real life woman, correct?
No, not that he was engaging in sexual intercourse with actual women.
Part of the records that you did not review were the text messages that were part of the phone extraction of her phone device, correct?
That's right.
You indicated in your conversation with Mr. Owens that some of the traits that are commonly seen in abusers would be control, jealousy, easily angered.
This could be, yes.
What other traits for just common for abusers?
Being a person who segregates their victim away from other sources of support, somebody that exhibits coercive control, meaning that they would prevent the person from engaging in activities that would be independent, so restricting their ability to have independent, like life, job, money, things like that, that would be supportive of them being left, for instance. Other things would be using emotional expressions like rage to cause a physiological reaction in another person. So those could be additional descriptions.
Specifically, the materials you reviewed. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Paperwork from prior cases involving Mr. Torres and Ms. Boone.
Yes,
Medical records for Mr. Torres.
that's right.
The medical and Aspire records for Ms. Boone that we discussed.
Yes,
The crime scene photos from the incident in February.
that's right.
Pages 1 through 413 in discovery in this case.
Right.
A photograph of a suitcase and 2 videos involving the suitcase,
That's right.
and additional videos on that phone, correct?
Yes,
Such as baseball bat smashing the TV.
that's part of it. Yes.
And then did you review any other videos where there's conversations between Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres?
Yes.
One prior 911 call?
Yes.
Now, today you had indicated that you had reviewed the photographs from some prior incidents of violence, correct?
Yes.
When is it that you did that? Is that recently?
No, there are photos included with the
prior case packages?
Case packages. Thank you. I'm not sure what to call it. So
That's fine.
All right.
All right. And did you review any body worn camera from those prior case packages?
no, I did not. I didn't have that.
Anything else that you reviewed that I've not covered?
Are you speaking of documents only?
Yes, materials other than your 9 visits with Ms. Boone.
All right.
She lost a bit of her swagger.
Just
Why does she have 87
for today?
binders? None of this makes sense. She's the most
I don't know
disorganized
if bias that would be
human
part of the
ever.
discovery. The investigative report is within those 413 pages.
Did you interview anybody else personally besides Ms. Boone?
Yes.
Who else did you personally interview?
Melissa Sexton?
All right. Anybody else?
No.
You didn't interview Brian Boone, correct?
I did not.
You did not interview their child in common, correct?
No.
And you didn't review the phone text messages extracted from her device, correct?
No, I didn't.
Did you review any records from the jail?
No.
And yes.
Approaching time. Speed up.
Yeah, because if you see her communications from the jail where she's, I don't want that food, I want this food. I have allergies, I don't have allergies. I don't like the hair braiders.
Yeah. And thank you, Katie Power, for the Mike super sticker. Thank you so much. No, she didn't read anything but what the defense gave her to look at, and she was like, she's absolutely, speaking Sarah's language. These are all things that can be attributed to Sarah. And if she watched that, him beating the TV and got something other than staged out of that or something off.
Yeah, that
I
was
don't
really
know.
weird. That was very weird.
Thank you so much for the super sticker. We are going to be on top of it when they come back because of all these sidebars.
And again, why didn't you interview Brian Boone when you were talking about past trauma that built up? And he could tell you, well, she had used to attack me. Yeah, she when she couldn't get her way, she got angry. And review the prison records. She had a high sense of entitlement.
I will have to look at the knife throwing expert.
He has
I may need
the
a palate clean.
He has the dad bots of dad bots.
Ooh.
And he misses a lot of the throws as well. So, but we don't really see the throwing, but there's a lot of knives sticking in the wall.
I can't. What is going on? America, we have to do a little bit better here. And, if you guys watched Newsy News this morning, there is Sarah Boone. There is a new slugger out there. A woman claimed she blacked out after having a fight with her boyfriend, father of her child. Somehow he stabulated himself and beat himself with a baseball bat. She's not quite sure how it happened, but she is in jail right now.
Get this lady on it, and she will talk about how that slugger had been treated badly by Mother Oak, and that's why she had trauma.
I am not yet. That case severely bothers me as a mother of many children, and that mom still being free and out. That bothers me because she sure as hell knew something was going on.
Oh, she's the one who gave the kid to the PDF file. Oh, yeah.
They were living with each other. He has all pictures of him abusing.
Objection sustained in part and overruled in part.
You testified earlier, in the normal course of practice of forensic psychology and psychiatry, you all do rely upon the diagnoses of other experts, correct?
You can inform my opinion, yes.
And you have not reviewed any electronic communications in the form of text regarding Ms. Boone's case, correct?
No, I did not.
Or recorded phone calls of any type, correct?
Well, 911.
Other than
No, other than that.
Now, let's talk about the February 23rd, 2020. She told you that they didn't really have anything going on to do that particular day, correct?
Yes.
It was a Sunday, correct?
Yes.
Did some chores, and then as a reward, they could rest after doing those chores, correct?
Right.
She indicated to you that she and Mr. Torres did not begin drinking until about 4 p.m., correct?
I'll have to.
Oh, that's another
Page
lie.
36 of your deposition, if you care to use that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, this
36.
Yes, ma'am.
So again, remember what she said yesterday? They began drinking around noon.
yeah,
All right, I'm with you. Around 4 p.m.
And you reviewed the crime scene photos of this case, correct?
I did.
That included receipts for some purchases that were made at the Publix on February 22nd and 23rd, correct?
That's right.
And one of those receipts was a purchase for a 1.5 liter bottle of Woodbridge Chardonnay at 12:17 p.m. on February 23rd, correct?
Yes.
Did you question her about the inconsistency of them having purchased a bottle of wine at 12:17 that afternoon and not start drinking until 4 p.m.?
No.
No. Did you do your job?
And did she tell you that they had any wine left over from the day before that they consumed that day?
At some point, I'm not sure if it was the day that I was going through this line by line with you in my deposition, but I am aware, yes, that there was an unfinished bottle of wine from some other date.
And then, as the receipt showed, there was 2 additional bottles of 1.5 liters of wine purchased at 12:17 p.m. and about 5:30 p.m. on the 23rd, correct?
Right.
Becca Lynn, if you're a raving
And
alcoholic,
Were you
it's
aware of
probably
approximately
not
how
something
much
you hide.
Ms. Boone, the defendant, weighed at the time of this offense, February 23rd, 2020?
Around 100 pounds.
And in the first 413 pages of discovery, I believe, was the autopsy report, correct?
Right.
And so you're aware that Mr. Torres was 103 pounds at his death?
Yes.
Do you take into account this alcohol consumption when evaluating what Ms. Boone is telling you about the events of the day?
Yes.
Did she tell you whether or not she was intoxicated by the amount of alcohol she consumed that day?
Please silence your cell phone.
Please throw that guy out of this courtroom.
So she did not describe herself as intoxicated originally when we discussed this. So
So the answer is no. She did not describe herself as intoxicated.
intoxicated, right?
Yesterday, she said she was so
Hypothetically-
intoxicated she was drunk the day
hypothetically,
after.
yeah. So Sarah did good yesterday when we were learning how Sarah viewed the situation. What is going to come back and bite Sarah in the behind is that her recollection has been, well, just all over the daggone place.
Yeah. She forgot all of that thing she remembered yesterday when she talked to her shrink. It happens. But because she was an alcoholic at the time, her memory is crystal clear today. That's the rules of alcoholicism.
Yeah, apparently.
She had told the jury that she was intoxicated at the time of the offense. Would that affect your evaluation of her credibility of the history she provided you?
No, because that was also my opinion.
Did she indicate to you in describing the events of February 23rd, 2020, that there was any point in time she just simply did not remember?
Yes.
What points in time are those?
So she did not remember taking the videos of the suitcase or the incident in the suitcase until she was at the interrogation room, I guess, and then they were going through them with her. Then she recalled that.
I'm talking about specifically with you. Did she indicate that there were any portions of the night that, or day or night that she did not remember?
I can't recall anything specifically right now.
Hypothetically, if she had indicated to the jury that she did not remember the 9 or 10 minutes immediately preceding the first video being taken, would that be inconsistent with what she told you then?
No,
Well, she didn't indicate to you that she forgot any part of the night, right?
right. She just didn't say that. So
Would it affect your evaluation of what she told you about the events of February 23rd, 2020, if she hypothetically has testified that she did not remember 10 minutes before the videos?
Not really, no, because the event and the course of events that she narrated to me occurred over several hours. So when you interview somebody about circumstances of an offense, it's the
Baker, you
usual
will
for
not
someone
leave me
to
alone
not
with
remember
this.
every single minute for hours at a time. I can't imagine that anybody's memory could hold that much unless they have like photographic memory or something.
I'm not asking about hours and hours of, itemization of her days.
No crap, Sarah doesn't have eidetic memory. She can't remember yesterwember, all right? But she sure can remember every daggone thing that George did to her. But no, I already assumed she was drunk.
Yeah, I didn't find any fault with anything because I had my diagnosis I had to read, and then I just filled in the roadmap to the diagnosis.
Just, why?
Day's events. We're talking about the 20 minutes of the offense. Does that affect the weight that you give her history she provided you? Just yes or no?
No,
Nothing could have changed the diagnosis
Now,
because
what
she had
indicated to you was the day had been going well. It was fun and games, correct?
yes.
Conflict free.
To her, she said it was a good day. So
Okay.
that's what she told me.
She said it was a good day.
Yes,
And there comes a point in time where the activities turn towards hide and seek, correct?
yes,
And she goes up to the shower.
Right.
And when she comes down from the shower, that's when Mr. Torres is in this suitcase, correct?
getting into it.
And she goes over to the suitcase and zips it, correct?
Yes.
And did she describe whether it was 100% zipped to you or just a certain percentage?
She said that it wasn't zipped all the way.
And still then, that was funny to the two of them at first, correct?
That's right.
And then there came a point in time where Mr. Torres was getting mad about being zipped in the suitcase.
She told me that he was getting mad.
And that, in turn, made her mad.
That's right.
What Mr. Torres was saying was, I can't breathe, correct?
That is what's recorded on the video.
Well, I'm asking you about what you reported her saying.
Well, what made her mad was not that he was saying he couldn't breathe. It's what he was saying that was making her mad.
Well, what else was he saying?
At the time, she said that he said something that was making her mad. And so that's the extent of what we talked about at that moment.
So you didn't elaborate what something was that made her mad, correct?
Right.
Baker, let's do a hypothetical. You're a
Yes.
psychologist. I
Yes.
come in and I say, someone was making me real pissed when he was in a suitcase, and that made me
You are
angry.
entitled to your feelings. I feel you have been a victim of microaggressions, micro trauma. I will start you off with a low doses of medication,
Copium.
and you will have to see me twice a week for the next 10 years and buy my kids' way to college. I mean,
Baker?
I trust you.
Would you ask the person, what were they saying that was pissing you off? Like, just if you had just the modicum of curiosity, or would you say, hey, don't answer that because it might make your defense look really, really bad?
And I would probably, just like I wouldn't take 9 meetings and sit and talk about, because I think in those meetings, they probably talked about what constitutes battered spouse syndrome. Just so you can say
Yeah.
all the right words about changing scenarios and all of that. This comes off so disingenuous. I am just hoping that the collective jury minds is as strong as ours.
I make no promises.
Right. She said he said something that made her mad, and that started making her mad.
You didn't find it important to learn what specifically he said that made her mad, correct?
I don't agree that I didn't find it important
Okay. Then explain. Why would you ask that question?
because as a person who is traumatized is describing their experience as a trained clinician, you will allow open-ended discussion of that experience. And so it's not an interrogation. You don't go asking confrontational questions at the time of their first narration.
Well, you had 9 visits with her. Did you follow up on your 9th visit?
I asked her different questions about
Did you ever ask
being
her?
confrontational.
Did you ever ask her specifically in any of your 9 visits with her what it was that he said that made her mad?
No,
She never described him doing anything to make her mad, but it was words, correct?
right.
And once she got mad, she decided that she was going to leave him in there for 2 minutes.
That's right.
Not 3, not 1, but 2, correct?
That's what she said.
And the reason she was doing that was because she wanted him to understand how it feels to be choked and what she had experienced.
That's right.
Did you ask her why she didn't let him out of the suitcase after 2 minutes?
Yes, I did actually ask her that.
And what did she say?
Well, she thought that he could get out himself. That's one thing. She said that when she was able to unzip it, it was not some significant thing. She was able to unzip it easily. So she said it never occurred to her that he couldn't get out.
You may proceed.
Oh,
And
loud.
you reviewed the still photograph of the suitcase as well as the 2 videos.
Right.
And did you understand what the metadata or what the timestamps were for each of those items?
I'm sure when I reviewed it, I saw the timestamp. Yeah,
Would you agree that 20 minutes is 10 times as long as 2 minutes?
I would.
And if Mr. Torres had not been able to get himself out of the suitcase within 20 minutes, she didn't indicate that she let him out, correct?
She did not.
She described to you, Ms. Boone being the she, that she was helpful to the police.
Yes.
Do you agree with that assessment that she was helpful to the police?
In the sense that she was having conversations with them without counsel.
In the sense that she didn't flee the effing state. I mean, at what point is the bar low enough? Oh, she was talking to them without counsel. That's because she's a dumbass, not that she was cooperative.
She's the smartest dumb person or the dumbest smart person in the world.
I'm going to need therapy after this.
I'm
But I don't
gonna. But when this is done, I'm gonna sleep in the suitcase.
I'm about to follow you there. This is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah. How many people talk to the police every day without counsel because they're too stupid to know the Fifth Amendment?
Oh my gosh.
I would consider that helpful to the police.
Do you think lying to the police is helpful to the police's investigation?
No.
Do you agree that she was not truthful with them?
Yes, I think that I would agree with that.
And when she described getting Mr. Torres out of the suitcase, she described stretching his little legs.
Yes,
And she stated to you there was no fight that day, correct?
that's right.
Just wanted him to be uncomfortable.
I need to clarify. Physical fight.
Right.
Yes.
Just wanted him to be uncomfortable,
Yes.
correct? And then there was a description of a bat and her using it to nudge, right?
Poke.
Poke. And so
Hook?
do we agree that that means like poking out like this as opposed to swinging it like you're a baseball hitter?
I would agree with you.
And you reviewed the autopsy report, correct?
I believe so.
Did you get an opportunity to review the autopsy photos?
Yes.
Did you question her when she said that she only poked him with the bat?
No.
Not in any of your 9 visits?
Did I question her about whether? Can you just repeat the question? I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly. Okay.
Did you ever, in considering the autopsy report and the autopsy photographs that you reviewed,
Yes.
when she said that she nudged or poked with the baseball bat, did you ever question her about that, given the severity of his injuries?
So to answer correctly, I did question her
Which,
about how she used the bat. And she reiterated that she poked and she gestured what she meant. So I did question her about that.
and did you have any questions about that history she relayed to you, given the other evidence in this case that you reviewed?
Just in contrast to the interrogation video. So that
It didn't contrast to the autopsy photographs or report.
I object.
Approach.
I object. It's making our expert look really, really dumb. So,
Did she indicate all this nudging or poking with the bat was done while he was inside the suitcase?
yes,
She never told you that there was any nudging or poking with the bat when he was outside the suitcase.
correct.
She indicated that she ended up flipping the suitcase over face down.
That's right.
Did she tell you about Mr. Torres calling his brother earlier that evening?
No.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Did she ever give you a history about a loud boom occurring inside of her townhouse that evening?
No.
And you never had the opportunity, obviously, to interview Mr. Torres about these things, correct?
Of course not. No.
No other questions?
Any redirect examination? Yes, sir.
Yeah, rehabilitate that she didn't look at half the evidence.
The state attorney talked to you about power and control, that an abusive partner will use power and control over the victim in a intimate partner violence situation.
Yes.
Threatening someone's dogs, is that an example of someone using control?
Yes.
Taking car keys from the other party, is that an example of control?
If they're withholding,
Possibly.
yes.
Taking a phone and withholding a phone,
Yes.
a debit card,
Yes.
destroying
He
a
didn't
home
have
with
a debit
TVs,
card.
putting holes in the wall,
Yes.
not helping pay the rent and other bills.
So I would say that that could be withholding, that could go under coercive control of another person.
What about violating a court order to have no contact with the person?
Yes.
That's all the question.
Thank you. Can this witness be released?
As far as the state is concerned.
Mr. Rhodes? Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. Just allow me a moment to back up.
Collect all your stuff, ma'am. No worries.
Sorry.
No apologies necessary.
So are they resting now?
I don't know.
At least one. They're going to have an expert in BSS to totally shred all of this, because he would look at all the evidence she didn't look at.
Yes.
We're approaching again. So I think tomorrow will be rebuttal. I don't know if the state's ready for rebuttal this afternoon.
No.
So my guess is tomorrow we'll have rebuttal. We'll have the jury.
All right, members of the jury, it is 4:01. At this point in time, we're going to go ahead and take that afternoon break. I got a couple things I got to address with counsel as well, so maybe a little bit longer, but we'll bring it back in as promptly as possible. Again, same instruction I've given you before. Please don't conduct any independent investigation or research. It's the person, places, things, or charge involved in this case.
about
And do not have any
4:02 there.
conversations amongst yourselves or anyone else about that. We'll bring you back in as promptly as possible. Thank you.
All right.
Y'all can be seated. Let's go ahead and take a recess, a comfort break for any of us, and then we can address any argument with regard to the any other evidence that the defense may be seeking. Let's come back here in about 10 minutes, so 4:13. Okay? All right, thank you. We'll be in a short recess.
And
You just hit
what
the live.
else?
If you hit the
So-
live, because they're
Oh.
back in 2 minutes. You
Oh.
don't have to fast forward. They're having a break till
Oh, yeah.
4:15. So
You know, I'm a professional baker. I know what I'm doing.
yeah, but I'm just it's the same with Marissa, where I'm sitting in private chat saying 2 times speed, 2 times, and she's like, I'm doing it. No, 2
I'm
times.
trying. This is why I like you being in charge of the buttons, because I'm just like, oh, it's magic and it works.
Yeah, we didn't fall that far behind. No, it's nice.
What in the hell are we doing with this case?
We started this day out with a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of calling people wine moms, and we couldn't see how amazing they did. This day have been 2 expert witnesses, a grandma who said, no, she wasn't an uppity We know she's an uppity because we've seen her videos. We read her. Well, they haven't read her letters, but they've seen the video where she sits there and they have seen all of her self-entitlement that this lady just testified to. We wasted how much time this morning with an expert who never even talked.
About an hour and a half, too,
yeah.
almost.
Who never talked to her. And then we had police officers come in and say, yeah, I saw Bruce. Yeah. Did you wear a body cam? Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on here. I mean, I'm trying to see that expert in the most positive light, but she never entertained any other explanation other than Sarah was definitely the victim. And the fact that she had
No, I'm
9
gonna draw some-
exposures. Okay, 9 exposures to this woman, and she doesn't think she's a narcissist. She doesn't feel like she's entitled to better and to be with a more elevated, highly educated people that know Latin. She doesn't hold herself in higher stead. Hair braiders. I'm not like the regular inmates here. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. I mean,
this attorney did this when she got the puzzle that is, what is this case? She said, let's just start down here. And instead of going through the maze, which is annoying because then I have to figure out are we going left or going right. Let's just go all the way around the side and just skip all the stuff. And whenever anyone asks us anything, we'll just say, well, I didn't look at that part, or I didn't believe that she was lying because I in my wisdom had foreseen that she was drunk, even though she lied to everyone and said I can't drink, I won't drink, I don't drink. But Miss Chimu, Dr. Muffins, and again, micro trauma.
good Lord.
This is the problem with expertification of the modern society, because the more high education workers you get out there, the more work they will have to create to bring bread to their own table. In Denmark, we have a saying that if one, in Denmark it's called a djøf, that's people who are working in like the middle management of the public. Their first and most important job is make 2 jobs for other members of the same union. So they just sit there and move stacks of paper, and when someone says, well, you made a mistake, well, we better hire 4 more to move the same stacks of paper, which just gives you this highly educated, low-skilled group of people. Go into every Western civil public workplace. You will have
Yes.
so many obnoxious titles, jobs, all the DEI, all the gender specifics, all of that crap that in the olden times you could fix because you had someone who can say, shut up, work. You didn't have people sitting there discussing, should we have blue or yellow paper? I think productivity and would be better on yellow paper. Could we please, maybe we should have green paper. Let's do a focus group. All of these people have too much education and too little skill. They have been told by mommy and daddy, you're good enough. You are the bestest. You don't have to
And
work.
yeah, it's remarkable that this woman who is supposed to be trained and educated to the nth degree on being able to understand the human condition and what people will do with, sort of all sorts of, a constellation of personality traits. And she's like, no, I met with Sarah 9 times. I found her to not be narcissistic.
Yeah, everyone else who met her have said she's a thunder. See you next Tuesday. But she was so nice to me. Yeah, James Bond. Well, this isn't capitalism because this is the communistic part that took over because everyone turned into the Frankfurt School model back in the 70s. All of these left wing, and I'm gonna use left wing. It's not on all of you who vote on the left wing. You are wonderful people, but all the professors who's sitting there filling people with. Back in the day when we had the tabula rasa, where everything was just a blank slate and we should learn stuff. No, today we are taught you can only have this
All right, we're
opinion.
back on the record, case number 2020, CF 2603, State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. Appearances for the state.
Dick Shore on behalf of the state, Lee J.
Defense.
Jane Gold for the defense.
Tony Henderson for Sarah Boone.
All right. Ms. Boone is seated at council table wearing the same dark gray suit and maroon blouse from this morning. Mr. Owens, are there any other matters we need to address before you rest in the presence of our jury?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Judge, there's two orders that I'm going to be requesting the court to take judicial notice under 90.202 sub 6, and the orders of no contact. I have copies of the certified copies of the orders. May I approach?
Yes. State, have you seen them?
Doesn't change my position.
Understand, but you have seen them.
I thought.
You have not seen them. Okay.
Doesn't change my position.
Understood. Okay. You can bring them on up.
He's like, get away from me, dude. I don't want to get another one of your pieces of paperwork.
Thanks, sir. Court has been provided no contact orders issued in case number 2019 MM5062 on or about June 16, 2019, and a no contact order in case number 2019 MM5114 issued on or about June 19, 2019. Both cases styled State of Florida versus Torres George Jr. Let me hear any arguments as to the judicial notice from you, Mr. Henderson.
Judge, I think they're relevant. I think just from the testimony of Director Dr. Harper, saying that an element of control is talked about greatly by the state. Now, things hypothetically that they refer to them as hypothetically. However, they refer to things that they're developing on this Boone. These show that there were in fact orders, and the orders were for no contact. So these are elements of control in relation to George Torres.
Okay. Response.
So in regards to the judicial notice aspect, we don't dispute that that can be a substitute for authenticity. However, they're not relevant, they're not admissible. They contain statements that were made by people who are not testifying. Just because an expert relies on something doesn't mean that it's admissible. What happened during redirect with Mr. Owens was he was asking what are the hypothetical things that we rely upon in making these determinations as an expert about whether there's Bagger spouse syndrome or not. So one of the many inadmissible things that he mentioned was pretrial orders of no contact. So it's fine. The expert can certainly rely on the fact that there may have been pretrial contact orders or no contact orders that were involved in this case, and she considered that. That doesn't make them admissible. There has been testimony, I believe, from Ms. Boone that there was pretrial no contact orders and violations of them. It's not a fact and dispute. It's just that doesn't mean that the paperwork comes in as evidence. So that's our objection. Is irrelevant and hearsay just because an expert relies on inadmissible evidence doesn't make it admissible.
What's your response to hearsay?
Judge, I think under the, as to hearsay, I think the statute takes care of that itself because it says that the court can take judicial notice. So that's the foundationary part. And it's not hearsay. It's an order of the court. We're in a case where we've gotten evidence of past domestic abuse. There was evidence of it started with the state about control. And these are things of control. And I'm sure the state's going to, in rebuttal, they're going to come up with things that they feel either by body cam or any other evidence that shows her exercising control. This shows Mr. Torres exercising control. It is very relevant.
Okay. But how's it not hearsay? Just because it's a court record, it's still out of court statement. It's certainly being
Hey,
offered for the truth of the
Judge,
matter
don't
asserted.
ask questions we weren't.
Judge, that's why we have the thing that the court could take judicial notice of. There are certain things that court.
But the case law says you can't utilize judicial notice to get around hearsay?
Oh,
That's a micro trauma right
I know
there.
9202 says that I may take judicial notice. 9203 says that upon sufficient notice being provided, which the state is conceding based on their argument, the court shall take judicial notice of items identified in 9202. But my question is, the case law, as identified in Professor Earhart's treatise, specifically says in Dufour v. State, 69 Southern 3rd, 235, which specifically talks about notice of judicial documents in a court file, that doesn't get you around hearsay. So what's your response?
well, we don't
Let me
read
go to
case law.
hearsay in my mind again.
You're fine. Take your time.
Yeah, think on your feet because that has worked so well for you so far. Oh,
Someone help him.
yeah. Again, they have not had one single motion backed up by case law. Not one. They are 3 lawyers, 2 paralegals, and they still can't come up with case law. And they know this judge is a stickler for the rules.
Judge,
Yes.
I'll start this way first. One of the exceptions to the hearsay rule is business records exception. So if it's a
It's not a business record.
and it's kept in the normal course of business, then someone can come in and lay the foundational things for the business record exceptions to the hearsay rule. However, in this case, that would not be
Thank you.
needed if the court takes judicial notice of it. That eliminates the necessity to do a business record in that foundation because the court, under the statute 90.2026, can take judicial notice of court orders. This
Yeah,
is
and he
court
just said
order,
902.3
I
said
think it's an exception
even though you
to
take
hearsay.
judicial notice, it's not
Also,
a way
I
to
think
circumvent.
The probative value
He just said it to you.
these documents outweighs any prejudicial effect.
Any other argument?
No, you wrote.
Any other argument, state?
The fact that there was a pretrial court order of no contact between them is going to come in. I mean, on one of the body worn cameras, Mr. Torres is like, well, you know, the court said I couldn't, but she said I could come. And I believe she testified to that during her examination. My objection is to the paper and the grounds that I've argued.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. State v. Mobley, 98 Southern 3rd, 124 by the Florida 5th District Court of Appeal, cited in 2012, says that there's a procedure that specifically needs to be followed for judicial notice, as set forth in 9202 and 9203. State is conceding that although there's not a writing, they're not objecting to the judicial notice concept. They're objecting to the evidentiary bases. I do find that it is relevant, but the problem is I have with hearsay. And the court, in relying on the Florida Supreme Court decision in Dufour, D-U-F-O-U-R v. State, 69 Southern 3rd, 235 at pinpoint 253 by the Florida Supreme Court in 2011, which states, while the court may take judicial notice of documents in a court file which were properly placed there, this notice would not make the contents of the documents admissible if they were subject to challenge, such as when a document is protected by privilege or constitutes hearsay. It is an out-of-court statement that is being offered for the truth, to wit, it is a no-contact order, and the requisite requirements for a business record under 98036 subsection A have not been met, nor has there been a certificate from the custodian of records as to those things as required by section 6, paragraph C, and the timeliness of a certification. So I cannot accept judicial notice of these two documents, even though the state is not conceding the procedure for judicial notice. I am sustaining the state's objection as to hearsay under the grounds and the exceptions that you have offered.
Okay, so what are the bets that Owens is going to bring this up in the morning? Well, Your Honor, as you know, we were trying to get these very important, pieces of evidence in. Would you like to reconsider this for the 12th time?
Yeah, and I don't know what Nonya said. We have to agree to disagree on that, Baker. I don't know what we are agreeing to disagree on, but you're right. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't watch my stream. Jamie isn't on. She will not quiz me today.
Judge, we do have the clerk of court subpoenaed. I don't know where they are. I assume they're somewhere in this building. I believe they sent some message to us back before the hurricane about what they needed were to come, and we said to be continued. So we haven't gotten back up with them yet. So
it's been a week.
Hey.
it would take me some time to check on that. It's 4:30.
Was the subpoena still for this time period?
Yes, I believe it was a 3-week period,
Okay,
but we haven't followed back up with them. This came up
sure.
late.
I'll give you an opportunity to do that.
I don't know whether you could just go ahead and send them to home for the evening, and let me see if we can find the clerk maybe in the morning, and then we could rest in the morning, and then the state has Dr. Werner. It's probably going to take me a little bit.
Yeah, I'll give you that opportunity. Absolutely.
Right now?
If you want to, sure. If you want to try to do it now or do it tomorrow, I'll leave it to you. Because I can't imagine it would take long if we're able to get a records custodian or a person to lay the foundation. I can't imagine it would take that long.
Aren't they in the building?
Yes. 3rd floor?
So they are trying to get the protective orders from prior incidents against George into the record for evidence to show to the jury. Now, the problem with that is that these, protective statements take, other people's recollections as, part of how they gather the evidence to give you one. Now, that's hearsay because you can't put something into the court that someone hasn't testified to for the truth of the matter. But why
again-
does this judge not tell Owens no? Again, they've had
But it just opens up even more for the defense or for the state. They are scrambling now because with all of this prior acts of Jorge, they're going to show all the body cam videos we haven't seen, where she's acting very crazy, and where she's begging them to let him go in there, and she's the police are here, and ends up, oh, I can't wait for that one. Give me a hug. Can I have a hug, please?
Yeah, I know to appeal proof, but I just want him to tell Owens no, sit down and shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, Friday is Candy Day, not today.
Sure.
I suggest we go ahead and let the jury go. It's 4:30.
Okay.
I don't know how long it's going to take to do that. We could present that in the morning and then rest in the morning and then make.
All right, that works for me.
Oh my. What did CC just hear?
I'm going to make some more employee come in and do that. I was conceding the authenticity. I don't understand the relevance of it coming in.
Are you now withdrawing your hearsay objection?
Well, I still believe it's hearsay, but I think it's cured by it's a public record and it's stamped and all that stuff.
I know, but no one's made that argument yet.
I don't want to punish some poor clerk.
Okay.
I won't object to them coming in, but it's a slippery slope for other records. We'll see what we do as well.
Okay.
Yeah, he's just
All right.
telling them we're going to pick up everything.
The state is still
too.
maintaining its hearsay objection. I do find that it is relevant.
But I don't think we're
So then what do you want to do, Mr. J?
I'm stipulating to if the hang up for the court and the defendant is that they believe a clerk of the court needs to come in and testify, I'm conceding that issue so that person does not have to do whatever that issue is.
Okay, all right, fine. Then based on the court, on the concession by the defense, or I'm sorry, by the state, excuse me, do you have any other objections with regard to these two non-contact orders? Mr. J?
No more.
Okay, for the reasons previously articulated, I do find it's relevant. The state has withdrawn its hearsay objection. Do you want these as a composite or individual?
Individually.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you pre-mark them and then we'll identify them, please?
That's interesting. Yes, Gabby, these are non-contact orders against George by Sarah.
The no contact order in 2019 MM 5062 dated June 16, 2019 has been pre-marked as AB. And the no contact order in 19 MM 5114 dated June 19th, 2019 is dated as AC.
I believe there was one that
Mr. Owens, you
Sarah
can
was
approach.
thank to get.
Let's just tackle a couple other
Dropped.
housekeeping matters that we have. You can move those in when our jury returns into evidence. Are there any other witnesses, evidence, or testimony, sir, that you're going to be offering this afternoon?
I don't believe so, but we're intending on resting either this afternoon or first thing in the morning, but we want some time to talk to Sarah and explain to her, why we think we should rest, not call any further witnesses, not introduce any other exhibits, just to make sure that we're all.
Why didn't you do it in the 20-minute break we just had?
We need a little bit of time. I don't know if you want to go ahead and excuse the jury for the night and then have us come back in the morning and do that colloquy with the defendant. But we do need some time with her.
Okay.
You
All
are
right. So then
fine.
here's what we'll do. I'll bring in the jury and I'll excuse them. You can save those pieces of paper and you can move them into evidence tomorrow morning and then present. That'll work. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll bring the jury back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and you can continue with your evidence presentation at that time, including but not limited to calling any additional witnesses. Court can have any further colloquy with the defense at that time. The state then can put on its rebuttal case. The state, how long do you anticipate ballparking it for the court, your rebuttal case?
I don't think Dr. Warner will take long on our part. I'm not sure how long it'll take on their part. And then there's about.
How long is that for your part?
I'm not going to hold you to it, Mr. J.
Probably less than 30.
How long do you anticipate your cross being? And ballpark it again. I won't hold you to it.
This direct is 30, my cross is probably going to be 30.
Okay, what else do you have to present?
And then there will be about 2 hours of videos from body worn camera and from the phone extraction.
Mhm.
And then reading a good bit of phone text messages with the record.
Separate and apart from the 2-hour video presentation. Okay, got it. All right. Okay, so that's going to take us in tomorrow afternoon. Are we going to be in a position for the state to rest its rebuttal case tomorrow and proceed with closings? Or are we going to proceed with closings Friday morning after had the opportunity to have a full, not that we would not have a full charging conference, but after having a charging conference Thursday afternoon with regard to the jury instructions?
I just don't know how long. I think all the instructions are pretty relatively simple and straightforward, except for 3.6.
Agreed. 3.6F. I agree.
That's not going to be simple or straightforward in any way.
The instruction is complicated. I agree.
And the special jury instruction on that spouse that would be requested.
Okay.
There's different courts, Judge, here in Florida that use the special instructions. There's different courts in other states that have used a different instruction. We've looked at a bunch of them, so I don't know what this court is going to be inclined to do. If court would be so inclined to give a special instruction on battered spouse, and whether or not you want to consider one of the local courts, the Palm Beach County case that I mentioned before with Dr. Brown. There was a special instruction in that case. And then we've got some from other states. I don't know what state's position is going to be on that. So
Has a draft of that been circulated yet?
not to the court.
Okay. All right. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Okay. Let's just see how long the rebuttal case takes. And if we have to do closings Friday morning, we'll have to do closings Friday morning. I'd rather go through and spend the time to make sure that we're all on the same page with regard to the instructions, especially due to the complicated nature of 3.6F. With regard to those, the court will have Ms. Barrios email you all. She just started her drive back to Kissimmee, so it might come a little bit later this evening. I will have Ms. Barrios email to you all the red line that the court has worked on so far of the jury instructions provided by the state. The defense is to provide its markup of the 3.6F and 3.6G instructions and any other defensive instructions that the defense seeks to have read to the jury.
Before 9 o'clock in the morning?
I think so. That gives the state the opportunity during the lunch hour to review them in advance of our charging conference.
I'll have it done before 9.
Okay.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
There was one thing, the state had filed a motion requesting a special instruction as to, I think it was the voluntariness. I read the motion in the proposed instruction. I have no objection to it.
Okay, all right. So just so the record's clear, we're referring to the state's request for special jury instruction regarding Florida Criminal Standard Jury Instruction 3.9B, defendant statements, filed October 22, 2024. The provision that the state seeks to add to the 3.9B instruction reads as follows. Law enforcement is not legally required to ask a suspect whether he or she wants to talk to law enforcement after Miranda warnings are read to a suspect. This is, however, one of the factors you may consider whether the defendant's statements were voluntarily made. The state, have I read that correctly?
I believe so, without reading myself.
And defense, you have no objection.
No objection, Judge. And it's my understanding that's going to, there's already the standard instruction. That's an add-on to the standard.
It's just a matter of where y'all want it. So I will add this to the red line to be set out this afternoon. Ms. Boone, I want to have a couple other conversations with you, ma'am. Again, I don't want to know specifics of anything that you or your attorneys have discussed, just whether or not you've had those discussions. Did you hear the court read the proposed additional language to the jury instruction
I don't
about
know.
your statements?
Just now?
Yes, ma'am.
It depends how they run
So just to
it.
give you some background, ma'am, there's a form instruction, it's 3.9B, and it talks about how the jury is to consider your statements that were read to them and provided in evidence through the course of the trial. And that they're to consider the voluntariness of those statements and whether they were coerced. The state is seeking to add the following language to that instruction. Law enforcement is not legally required to ask a suspect whether he or she wants to talk to law enforcement after Miranda warnings are read to a suspect. This is, however, one of the factors you may consider whether the defendant's statements were voluntarily made. Do you understand that portion of the instruction?
Yes.
Do you have any questions about it?
No.
Okay. Have you had conversations with your attorneys about the proposed additional language that I just read to you?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay. Let's go ahead and have those conversations tonight when you all break, and we can go over this tomorrow when we have the charging conference. But I'll go ahead and add it to the red line for the purposes of our discussion tomorrow.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Anything else, state, we need to address?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead.
He is precluding her from having an ineffective assistance of counsel appeal later. So
Yeah.
because of her generalized past with lawyers and not agreeing with them, he is making sure that if she gets a negative outcome, her first move will not be to say, I had terrible lawyers. They didn't listen to me. They didn't, follow my strategy. So he is making sure that at every day or even every session, morning and afternoon, that she is being included, that she feels like this is a good strategy. It is to.
Nonya, I really don't see that. He has had most of his motions denied. He has had most of his objections denied. I don't know how you see he's been running it, other than just, he's getting it postponed till tomorrow to say we rest. That's not running the courtroom. He has shown himself as a very unskillful lawyer. I can't see him running any courtroom.
And I think the judge is erring on the very, very, side of keeping this appeal safe. So he is coming up with lackluster arguments that do not show an overt cause. But again, the Florida statute for self-defense is if there is a scintilla of evidence that it could be considered self-defense, we have to put it in. So he is erring on the side of caution. But it really, he's not made good legal sound motions
He
or
hasn't
anything
backed
like that.
one single motion with case law. He has multiple times asked questions that was redunculous. The judge have admonished him multiple times and overruled him so many times. He has run nothing. And every time he tries to do that, where he says, well, can we talk about that's not for today? I can't see how anyone can see Mr. Owens running the show here. The judge has been on top of this, made this appeal proof, made sure that no matter how mad Sarah Boone is going to get, she can get nowhere from this. Nowhere.
All righty, let's get to telling the jury goodbye.
Yeah.
Go ahead and bring our panel back in, and we'll tell them we'll commence tomorrow with additional evidence and testimony at 9 a.m.
You guys, I would caution you to wait. The state has been very measured. Rebuttal case, they are not. They are going to go off the chain. The gloves are going to be off. They're going to read all the text messages. They're going to, probably
We're going to
have
see
voicemails.
2 hours of body cam video tomorrow. Everyone relax. We started the day doom and gloom. The defense had a lucky day yesterday. The state just had the defense, 2 defense witnesses, experts, confirm that she had all the narcissistic traits, that she lied, that she didn't care for anyone but herself. I don't understand this doom and gloom. It's today was a horrible day for the defense. They didn't get anything. An RO, yeah, that's going to be countered by a police body cam where he says, I know I have an RO, but she invites me back in. Everything is going to be...
They haven't played any tapes or anything. So remember, we've got rebuttal tomorrow, and, and Owens is still going to be annoying. Sarah's still going to be weird, and we're going to be here.
Yeah. And again, everyone thought it was a high yesterday that they would continue on. Today has been absolutely running your face into a wall flat. Nothing today can convince anyone she was in the right. Yes, a lot of the bad things will come in now because Sarah opened the door. They couldn't bring up all the prior bad acts. We only seen the 2 suitcase videos and the police interview videos. Now we're going to see those times. We've watched all the videos where she comes running out of the house and, no, the police are here.
Yes, Your Honor. Defense, do you recognize our jury? I do. Thank you. Y'all can be seated. Members of the jury, good late afternoon, early evening, I think. Again, could you just raise those hands, confirm that you complied with the court's instructions? All right, record reflect all hands have been raised. Members of the jury, it's 4:43. We're going to go ahead and break for the evening. I'm going to ask you to be back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll continue with evidence and testimony presentation by the defense, and then we'll proceed accordingly thereafter. I want to read you the same instruction that I've read you multiple times over the last week, and I beg your forgiveness as you hear it again, but I just have to keep reminding you. Jurors, you must not conduct any investigation on your own. This includes reading newspapers, watching television, or using a computer, cell phone, the internet, any electronic device, or any other means at all to get information related to this case or the people and places involved in this case. This applies whether you are in the courthouse, at home, or anywhere else. You must not visit places mentioned in the trial or use the internet to look at maps or pictures to see any place discussed during the trial. Jurors, do not watch local news or read local newspapers. Jurors must not have discussions of any sort with friends, family members, or even your fellow jurors about the case or the people and places involved. So do not let anyone make comments to you or ask questions about the trial. I want to stress again that just as you must not talk about this case face-to-face, you must not talk about this case by using an electronic device. You must not use phones, computers, or other electronic devices to communicate. Do not send or accept any messages related to this case or your jury service. Do not discuss this case or ask for advice by any means at all, including posting information on an internet website, chat room, or blog. With that, members of the jury, again, I thank you for your time, your sacrifice, and your attentiveness in this matter, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. welcome you. Thank you. Anything else we need to discuss state before we go into recess? Defense, anything else? No, sir. All right, we'll see you all tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you very much.
Holy
Court's off
God,
the
it's a
record.
miracle. The state didn't, or the defense didn't have anything else to say. Well,
No. Yeah, that's nice. But yeah, we have talked about how the day ran. Tomorrow, a little before 9, and
yes.
don't worry. Tomorrow, the
Yeah.
state will have their chance to go into prior bad acts, because they didn't have that when Sarah was on the stand to begin with.
No.
I'm going to be
All right.
interested if they are going to recall Brian Boone to talk about prior bad acts.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. We are, grateful for all of the support and, hanging out with us during this trial and getting our takes and general shenanigans. And, we will see you in the morning, bright and early. We'll have our Woodbridge Farms.
And no micro traumas out there tonight.
Yeah. Don't get one. I don't know.
Don't give one.
Take your
Don't buy one.
telescope, microscope, electromagnetron, just make sure you don't step in one while you're out today. If you haven't remembered to like and subscribe to both of us, or I'm so bad at this YouTube stuff, but
they know
consider
what
it.
to do. You don't have to,
Yeah.
because most people have already left now, because they're sitting there thinking, oh, we don't want to hear about, please like and subscribe to the channel. It means
Oh,
so much.
well,
If you're
then-
watching on replay, put a link, put a in the, they know it. They watch YouTube all
Sounds
the
good.
time, because we are Wine Moms United.
Boxed wine over here, but bye, you guys.
Ciao.